Yo, what's good with it? He's Greg. I'm your boy Robert. We are the All Out of Fucks podcast. We got some friends of the show, family members of the show back in the building. It's Cam and Seth D in the building. What's good with it?
What up? What up?
How y'all feeling?
Feeling like my ancestors are walking with me.
That good, huh? Okay. Whenever you pull the ancestors out, you always know some shit that been popped off when you got to call on.
You got to call your goons. You got to call your goons, man. You just got to be reminded, like, oh yeah, somebody else got this.
No, that's cool, man. Seth, what's been good with you? How's it going, man?
Been a minute, man. Blessed, man. You know, on the grind.
All right, I feel you. I mean, you guys and your girl Sage she's your alumni, right?
Yikes! We didn't prep me for this. We don't claim her, man. We don't claim her.
She's an IU special.
Nah, man.
Is that what?
She was here when you were here, man.
She probably was.
Yeah.
I don't know when she graduated.
She was like right before we probably was freshmen. Well, I was probably a freshman when she was like a senior.
She was mid-90s.
Yeah,
mid-90s, but she wasn't at the parties that we was at, Bob.
I was about to say she wasn't at the same place. She was over in fraternity row.
Yeah, Omicron.
The bus didn't drive by there.
Right. Sigma. Was it
Sigma?
Yeah.
So
Delta, yeah, she was all that.
But no, we left that shit back in last week. So she's let me start on Sage still. So, hey, Greg, what's been good up with you too, dog?
Well, first off, I would like to say that I had my annual physical today, so all the sugar and grease on me. That's right. All my little tests came back where my glucose is down, my cholesterol is down. So everything I did in the year has worked. So I'm going to the Rib Shack and all the chicken spots that I could possibly eat.
All those statements, you couldn't get any blacker or older than Greg just got in that statement.
I call my
Rib Shack. The Rib Shack. My sugar's low. And,
I called my good friend Jim Clyburn, and he sat there and told me, "I am happy to hear that your sugars are low. You and the diabetes is not gonna get you." So
and some sweet tea. So let's go get some.
Let's go get some sweet tea.
Might go get some sweet tea.
He's not even gonna address it because he already knows.
Does he?
You don't save yourself just to kill yourself again, Greg.
No, fuck you don't.
Yeah, I'm the king of that.
You ever been speeding in a car and go, oh shit, and then you realize you done recovered and you're like, oh shit, I gotta do that shit again.
Back at it.
Get back up to 80, 85, 90.
I found some out today. I didn't realize. Did you know Oreos are vegan? I didn't know that.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that they're healthy.
So when you eat a whole sleeve of Oreo cookies, y'all just understand that. Just say, hey, look, I was just experimenting with the vegan lifestyle and just wanted to check it out.
Don't do that because there's healthy vegan and then there are vegans who live off of potato chips and Oreos.
Yeah, I gotta
potato
say
chips
that.
are vegan too. I guess so. Yeah. Well,
yeah, but your cholesterol will go through the fucking roof.
No, if you cooking on peanut oil, no, it's vegan. Wow. Vegan ASF.
Let me go get some potato chips real quick.
You grab some
talking about chips. Zero nutritional value. You the ones that people y'all the ones people gonna be hating on, like, well, where do you get your B12? Where do you get your protein? My potato chips.
I have these potato chips right over here. Got some cookies over there. I mean, once I saw those labs come back and they were like, you did well. Everything went down. You lost 3 inches on your waist. Your weight is down. I'm like, all I hear is go buck wild. Sorry.
Time to get it back.
Let's wrap this shit up.
Right.
It's like, I got a breakfast buffet. Can I get 3 churches chicken sandwiches?
He said churches.
Or it's the Popeyes. The Popeyes joints. My bad.
No, the church's chicken sandwiches you can get $3 for $1. So
right.
Do you speaking of chicken sandwiches? Anybody remember the Chicken Little sandwiches they used to have?
Oh my God, I miss those
from KFC. Yeah.
Yes.
Them mugs was flames.
You know what's funny is like the shit from your childhood. You start thinking about it, like, did that exist or was that just something in my mind? Because because you don't see them anymore. I'm like, did that shit actually happen?
Okay. Yes. What is this transparency moment? I haven't had them in years, but they do still exist.
Chicken Little still exist?
Yes, they just don't call them Chicken Littles. They're just I don't even. They're probably sliders now. It's the same thing, but they threw a pickle on it. Did they have a pickle on it back in the day?
Because everybody's putting pickles on chicken sandwiches now. That's because it just had mayonnaise on it back in the day.
Yeah, I was about to say that's some old Southern shit.
That's the only time I used to mess with mayonnaise.
Right.
Because those mayonnaise was flames.
We just had we had some real fat moments just then, so we're gonna leave that alone.
Right. And I'm hungry. Yo, Bob.
What up with it?
How are you, my man? I see you Chicago'd out. You got the Bulls going on, man. I know you're excited about preseason. How's my Chicago people doing?
Well, we a little down just because the White Sox got eliminated, but for the South side.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
but the Sky's doing good.
The Chicago Sky doing their thing. We'll see, man. Yeah, we realize it's preseason, but what we're looking at is the style of basketball we're playing. So we probably got the Central Division sewn up, so we ain't worried about that too much.
The Central Division with the Pacers.
That's mainly who I was thinking about when I said we had it sewn up.
You're not better than the Pacers.
Okay.
That's a topic for another day, but I'm just saying, like, I see you. I see you, man. I'm happy for y'all in the preseason.
Hey, look, it's not about the preseason. It's about the talent on the squad, and we got 2 cats that ain't even playing. So everybody's trying for periods of time when you get out on the court. Don't be mad that we made some adjustments and y'all can't stay healthy.
That's true. True.
And how many people? Everybody's
on the other side of Richmond, like Chicago Bull fans.
They should be, but probably not. No, I mean, no, you got me. It's probably Lakers fans. You know, everybody nowadays they fans of players. So everybody's a LeBron fan. So wherever he go, they just gonna follow the squad that way.
That shit's whack as fuck to me. I'm sorry.
I don't know about it's just a generational, right? Like we
I mean, my mom was a Bulls fan back in the day. So.
Right. Yeah, but I'm just saying, it's your team. It's the okay. Like now, granted, when Scotty left the Bulls and he was playing out there in Portland and Houston, I would still follow him, but it wasn't like I was going, I'm a fucking Houston Rockets fan now, or I'm a fucking Portland Trail Blazers fan. Fuck that.
Well, that's because it just kind of depends. Like these cats move around so much, it's hard for.
They're chasing rings.
Well, and this younger generation, they're front runners. Let's keep it real. So like they like winners. So whoever's winning, that's what we're gonna go with. So if you're a LeBron fan and he leave Cleveland from Miami, what the fuck you gonna do? Stay with Cleveland? If you're a front runner, probably not.
That's why I have a problem with Cleveland fans when it came to Cavaliers fans. I was like, you motherfuckers ain't Cavaliers fans.
Fucking Cleveland fans are the most loyal fans in the world. They love the Browns. Let's not even.
The Browns are different. Well, that's true.
But basketball, the Browns broke their heart, and they, that's a little different than what the Cavs are doing. Nobody likes the Cavs, not even the Cleveland people.
Yeah, so let me just get this shit out.
To y'all,
let me get this shit out the way right now. You Cleveland Browns fans, okay, y'all happy, blah, blah, blah. Look, you motherfuckers have been good for fucking 4 minutes. We were good for fucking 4 decades. So before you say shit about a steal of this and steal of that, I'm just gonna tell you right now.
Damn, nobody said shit about the Steelers.
I know. I had to get the Browns fans out the way because these motherfuckers is running around this goddamn city. Like, this is really fucked up.
Nobody said shit. Nobody said shit about even really the Browns. Really, like kind
it's Cleveland
and
it's
passing.
The Cleveland fan.
And Greg was like, and speaking of the Steelers,
no, I'm just saying these motherfuckers run around Columbus and shit. Yeah, you motherfuckers, you in Columbus. You don't even got a fucking football team.
I mean, but they in Ohio, dog. I mean,
Oh,
They
okay.
are in Ohio.
Cincinnati, the Bengals ain't a thing.
I mean, but this is primarily a Brown state.
Cincinnati got it.
It's primarily a Brown. I mean, don't get me wrong. No, it's probably 50-50. Like, there's a lot of Bengals fans around here. I mean, being in Columbus, you get the Steelers folks, you get the Browns and the Bengals, you get all those folks.
Browns, I still think their fan base in Ohio is significantly lower than the Steelers.
It might be. It might be.
Yeah, because they punk asses is too scared to just die on that hill. So they wanted to wait until they actually got good, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm a Browns fan." Steelers don't give a fuck.
I saw LeBron did that. On something. He said, "No, I'm a Browns fan. I grew up a Dallas fan."
He was a Cowboys fan. He was a Cowboys fan like 2 years ago.
Right.
Like,
like, okay.
All right. I can say what I can contribute to this conversation is the Centennial NFL commercial, because I don't like the NFL organization. I'm not a fan of football. It literally takes me dating someone for me to have to restart and relearn the game again because they're watching it. So I have no investment in football. But to watch that 100th Centennial commercial, and I started recognizing like Emmitt Smith and all of these players, I was like, my childhood is coming back, because my mom was hardcore.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of the NFL, fuck it. Let's do this.
Hold on.
Jon Gruden.
Oh my goodness.
Well, so I was gonna bring up Jon in connection with the topic, right? So like Greg just want to kind of jump all the way in. Right. So let's introduce the topic, right? So everybody knows that Dave Chappelle released his special, The Closer. Shout out Dave. The show is a fan of Dave Chappelle, so let's keep it real. I won't speak for Seth or Cam. I think I know where they stand, but I won't speak for them. But the show definitely fans of Dave. Completed his Netflix contract. Pissed a lot of folks off in the process, which is what Dave does. Also gets you thinking. So long story short, he is totally pissed off the alphabet community and specifically trans folks. So, as a show, we hadn't really jumped in on this topic just because, I kind of talked about this before the episode. It's not a lot of skin in the game from, if folks that, we're involved with, but it's an interesting topic. I mean, with everybody kind of everybody all of a sudden is a expert on whether or not, sex or gender is binary or non-binary all of a sudden. So we thought we'd just jump into shit and see what everybody thought, kind of have some conversations, see how it impacts, the movement, so to speak. But speaking of, so you brought up Jon Gruden. The Jon Gruden shit is interesting, right? So Dave, to kind of lay the foundation for this thing, Dave basically got on this special defending himself from the LGBTQ plus community and trans folks in particular, talking about how he's not against trans folks or any LGBTQ plus folks. He's just basically saying, look, it seems like whenever there's an issue that is negative towards Black folks, it's much easier digested than whenever there's some sort of negative comment or joke or whatever it may be about the LGBTQ community, right? So, and he just kind of goes in. If you haven't seen the show, I mean, it's not really a spoiler. It's a comedy special. So if you haven't seen it by now, you probably need to catch up. But so he was just kind of talking about within the context. I mean, I think he talked about in the context of the baby, talking about how you do realize this nigga shot somebody in North Carolina and killed him. At a Walmart. That didn't kill his career, but as soon as he says something about gay folks in the parking lot doing certain stuff at Rolling Loud Festival, all of a sudden now he's canceled across the board. He's like, that's interesting how you can literally kill somebody and then not do anything to derail your musical career, but the minute you say something to offend a particular group, specifically LGBTQ folks, all of a sudden the world loses their mind.
Hold up, Bob. Let me interrupt. It wasn't you can literally kill somebody. It was you can literally kill a nigga.
Right. That's true. Yep.
Yeah.
And your career will blossom. You will be the number one streaming artist. You will, that adds credit to your lyrics,
And to qualify the baby, the underlying incident was, I guess, a situation where he claims he was defending himself. And the reason why that there were never any charges, all the witnesses, nobody testified or something like that. So, but the baby has been very adamant that it was a self-defense situation, and that's what happened. But
he has lyrics that says, "I'll shoot a nigga again. I'll kill a nigga again." You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, hey, the baby, do your thing, whatever. But that, you know, that's telling.
Take it out of context of the baby, just hip hop in general. The 90s, we grew up in the 90s, and your music is selling. If you talk about killing a nigga, your music is not selling. J. Cole couldn't even, I mean, J. Cole has done well, but his conscious music, you never hear that on the radio. You hear where he's being misogynistic or whether he's using the N-word. And, you know, that's what you hear on mainstream media outlets. But his conscious shit, you got to be a fan to hear that.
Oh, so that speaks to the Jon Gruden issue, right? And what Greg was talking about. So Jon Gruden, and it's funny how these issues conflate at the same time. So basically, or converge at the same time. You know, Jon Gruden, some emails from like 11 years ago, whenever, some time ago, popped up. The initial email, he was talking about DeMaurice Smith, the NFL Players Union attorney, general counsel. Basically, he joked about saying he had big lips or some shit like that. You know, traditional black folk stereotype shit. Jon Gruden, everybody is kind of white savior, so to speak, in football. Like, so he made that comment. So he came out real indignant right after that. Like, look, I apologize for this shit. I'm not about to talk about this shit anymore. You know, that's not who I am. That's not my legacy. Blah 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 blah. That was.
He said I had a bad moment.
Had a bad whatever. Like, he basically said, "Leave me the fuck alone. I already dealt with this shit. So stop talking about this bullshit." I'm paraphrasing. Mm-hmm. So literally, like the next day on Monday Night Football, if you were watching, like, and I seen it earlier in the day, they released a bunch of other emails apparently that he had sent to some folks with the Washington football team, formerly the racist ass Redskins. No surprise there, right? But basically going in on calling Roger Goodell, I think called him a faggot or something like that, and some other stuff. And you know, and I'm just quoting, so folks are you can't say that anymore. Like, I'm literally quoting what he said. So that's what he called Roger Goodell. Then I think he said they are saying some stuff about women. So basically, it fell in line with some misogynistic shit, and then talking about the LGBTQ community. The minute that shit came out, they basically, next thing you know, he's fired or he's resigning. I mean, effectively he's fired. But it kind of pointed to exactly what Dave was talking about. This idea that you can say what you want about black folks, or whenever it implicates black folks, it's kind of like, we'll kind of deal with it. But the minute you jump in on LGBTQ folks or even women, then all of a sudden it's like, all right, fuck it, you out of here, even if you a old white guy, right? So that's just kind of the foundation, Greg. I know you was trying to jump into something there, so I'll let you go ahead and jump into it.
Yeah, I was going to say that, you know, I mean, this is all stemming from emails from the past. We're talking about, this is how fucked up, and this goes to technology. So you motherfuckers who are all into your phones and shit, okay, you better hope in 10, 15 years somebody don't come dig your shit up, because he wrote majority of these emails some 7 or 8 years ago. So when he's on camera and behind the podium sitting there going, I had a bad moment and blah, blah, blah. It wasn't a bad moment. They had a collection of emails over a course of 7 years. So you can't have several bad moments. This is who you are. It just so happened to come out based on an investigation that they doing elsewhere. So technically, if they weren't doing that investigation, we probably would have never known this shit was coming out in the first fucking place. So you got caught up in some shit. But he talked about women, NFL referees. You know, he's not too happy about that shit. He called Roger Goodell the faggot. He called DeMaurice Smith all kinds of N-words and big lip bastards and all this other stuff. And this is one of your premier, quote unquote, say what you want of him as a coach or whatever, but he's a quarterback mind and all this other stuff. The NFL really, really like stood behind him and figured out how to give him a job after he hadn't even been coaching for 5 or 6 years. They get
10 years, 100 million.
Yeah, and then he fucking gets a job coaching the fucking Raiders.
Team in Vegas. Like
I guess I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out. So of course I don't, you know, I'm catching up as you're speaking, Greg. But I guess to me, NFL, BET. I mean, I feel like legitimately this is the same narrative, period. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. And part of that narrative is the fact, if you want to look at it in terms of professionalism and, you know, having these people lead these organizations and have such influence over these type of organizations and express these type of thoughts and opinions on certain things, and you look at their work history, you look at, you know, their legacy, a lot of it is literally rooted in white privilege. Them being able to be hired with or without qualifications. Nobody cares if they're racist or not. Most people don't care about racism in the face of capitalism, Black or white. We will dismiss a lot of shit if it means I can collect a bigger check.
Yeah, I think my crux with it is the fact that it, just like Bob said at the beginning, the Black community is the only community that is supposed to rise above the fray, be better than that, always forgive when somebody wrongs us. And it's a goddamn shame when you have, and we had this on episodes prior to this, it's goddamn shame when folks like John Brown is stomping harder for you than you. The Black community, like if the narrative is not controlled by us, and motherfuckers is saying all types of shit that they want. Nigga this, nigga that, kill this, nigga this, kill that, bitch this, bitch that, fuck that bitch this, fuck that bitch that. And everybody is just like, well, that's just their culture. No, it's not. But motherfuckers need to stand up and sit there and say, it's not our culture. You can't fucking say it. We're the only community that does not sit there and ride hard. And so with Gruden, he ain't the only one. We know this. The NFL's full of them motherfuckers.
Right.
To me, this proves that shit, like, there is a conspiracy against fucking Kaepernick. Like, these motherfuckers hide their promised land folks. They hide them, and
we knew that.
Say what?
Yeah, and within the context of all this LGBTQ stuff, right? So I think what's interesting and kind of what Dave was getting at in the context of his comedy was this idea, and I thought he was pretty, like, honestly, I thought he was pretty vulnerable, pretty open about it. Like, look, legitimately, it's not about anybody being critical of you. He said, literally never say anything about not liking y'all. He said, I'm jealous. He said, I'm jealous of the advancements that you guys have been able to make. And I know he was kind of saying it in a short period of time, because let's keep it real. Like, that's why people joke all the time about the LGBTQ mafia. Like, because the minute you say anything about anybody LGBTQ, it's usually a wrap for, you know, your career. And I think before we got on the show, Cam mentioned Jews as well. Like, it's for Jewish folks as well. It's the same thing where, you know, you get certain topics that people won't tolerate, some folks, but when you talk about those things, because within the context of the NFL, I think it's real interesting. I think it was just an interesting articulation. Literally 90% of, or maybe not that high, but there's a significant percentage of the population in the NFL that is impacted by those comments. Whereas, like, the comments with respect to the LGBTQ community, or even like women for that matter, is a significantly smaller community. So you can say something as racist as Morris Smith having, you know, big lips, or basically, you know, using whatever racial stereotype you want to have of the current NFLPA attorney, right? You can say that shit, but basically the backlash was like, yeah, those are terrible comments, but he's going to keep his job. Matter of fact, he coaches that Sunday. And then all of a sudden, these other emails come out where he said some stuff, you know, using the, you know, the F word, faggot, and all that, and all this other stuff. Then all of a sudden, it's like, you know what, we got to cut you loose. So it goes to the point of who anybody is comfortable talking negatively about. And you're right, Cam. At the end of the day, it comes down to money, because traditionally, and this may be a stereotype, but I think it's a stereotype that holds true. LGBTQ community, it wields a very significant economic stick. So, and there's a lot of financial, and there are behind it.
A lot of white males, white homosexual males who can turn that, like, I mean, and Dave pointed that out, you can turn it on and turn it off when you need to be aligned with white folks. you can move into, you can conveniently, kind of shape shift.
So, and that's kind of the point that Dave's making, right? This idea that
talking about, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, within these movements, he's like, okay, you can have these movements, but even within these movements, you have the oppression of Black folks in these movements, right? So even within the context of the LGBT community, there's still oppression of Black lesbians, gays, trans folks as well, because this idea of white supremacy still permeates within those movements, even within the context of feminism, right? He talks about the idea of white supremacy and how it doesn't really address the Black feminist movement or the struggle that Black women go through. So this idea that no matter what movement we're talking about, we're still coming back to the same thing, that white supremacy is a thing that continues to oppress Black folks no matter what the struggle is. And that's what he's trying to dig into, I think.
Well, I mean, part of the issue, and I alluded to this and I guess the pre-recording, but we really, as Black people, have to unlearn a lot of things, because for self-preservation reasons, I think it's cute to get on social media and say, I'm not my grandmother, but you don't know what your grandmother sacrificed in the face of literally having to look just because, or your great grandmother, oh, you're freed now and you're walking down the street and you can't read because it was against the law for you to read, and you don't see this, you can't understand this no trespassing sign, and all of a sudden you're back in slavery. So we don't know what our ancestors had to endure before we get and say we're not them. But as we're saying we're not them, what are you actually sacrificing? How are you picking up? How are you carrying the baton? How are you, how is the torch being handed to you? Because if you're complicit and you think, and this is just the energy I get from us right now, we stand firm on the voting rights, but we don't stand firm on anything else. Our motto is to keep your head down and do what you got to do for your family. The same exact thing that a lot of our ancestors had to endure, because it's a matter of me speaking up and my son being murdered, or me just putting my head down. And we always have to make those decisions. So it's either our well-being and we become complicit, or we pop out when it's convenient and we want to stand together and make some noise, as long as it doesn't come as a sacrifice to my own personal well-being. We can't keep riding the fence.
And so that's part of what I was trying to get to in the pre-show as well, is, and I really don't know how to articulate it, but our fight is multifaceted. Mm-hmm. It's all those things you just mentioned, where these other cultures, people that are fighting, they want to be accepted, they want to be respected, they want financial prosperity, whatever it may be, but it's usually singular. It's and I can't speak for them, but that's the way I perceive it. And that makes their fight a little bit easier. I'm interested where the money comes from, because that's what it all comes down to, right? But we have our fight in so many different ways that it just makes it hard for us to bond. We had talked about, the folks that make it, they get the whole Jim Clyburn syndrome, where, hey, you niggas need to do better yourselves. Like, I made it, and they're not helping. They're hurting the Bill Cosbys of the, those types of niggas. And that makes it a little more difficult for us, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, because you don't have a white finger wagging at white, uneducated people, right?
Exactly.
I don't really like to use slurs, but rednecks, they call each other rednecks, but right. There's definitely classism within the white or the European demographic, Caucasian demographic here. But like you said, it's singular, because from the poorest to the richest, they feel as if we're a threat, yes. But we don't view them as a threat collectively. We are willing, as soon as somebody dances a jig, quotes a Biggie verse, we're inviting them to the picnic, and we're letting them infiltrate our legacy and water us down and label us in new ways. I'm very disheartened at all of these labels that this generation is willing to put on themselves. just because white academia came up with it.
What do you mean?
Like we're not our children are not defining themselves anymore, especially if you're in a pretty mixed school base.
What do you mean?
Which is more often the case now.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
What kind of labels?
So I think somebody was saying it earlier, but like cis this and binary that and I'm this, and when it comes to gender, so we're even making these terms more acceptable. But you ask a kid who clearly looks like they have African American or Latina in them, and they're like, I don't know what I am. I'm mixed. I know somebody's Indian. Like they won't even identify as a race or a culture anymore. But there are so many labels to identify their sexuality and their gender.
Yeah, I mean,
their pronoun.
And so I think what was interesting is the conversation around like the pronouns and everything. It's funny because this country has a real problem always talking about race, right? And it's so much so that as much as they might even hate having the LGBTQ conversation, I feel like they'd rather have that conversation than they would to actually deal with these issues of race. I mean, you just look at everything that's going on, and the LGBTQ conversation is a hard one for me to kind of really dive into because, like I said, it doesn't directly impact me from the perspective that I don't really have any skin in the game, but I can assess it from the perspective that, look, anybody who's struggling out here, I can identify as a Black person, understand it because we have the similar struggles if there's oppression out here somewhere, and we tend to fight oppression anywhere. That being said, there are some things that it does feel a little overbearing at times with respect to pushing these concepts onto us, and I think I see it more in the context of pushing it on to children and minors, right? I mean,
yes.
You look no further than recently, I think the Superman comics, DC has announced that Superman's son, Lois Lane, and Superman's son in the comic books is Jonathan. If you watch it, there's a TV series out now. They broached the subject of the sons as well. I'm a comic book head, but the comic book, they've announced that the son is going to be gay. And what you have seen...
Bisexual.
I thought it was gay.
No, I think
I read
bisexual.
Bisexual, yeah.
Okay.
All I know is that the Sugar Hill Gang said you look like a sucker in a blue and red suit. I mean, that's what I know.
So I mean,
78.
But you're seeing this within the context of a lot of I mean, even within Marvel, there's conversations about, well, who's going to be the first LGBTQ character? We need to make sure we get this stuff out in front. So then we inevitably find ourselves in this conversation almost like it's almost like we're comparing struggles, right? Which is not really what we're saying. I think when we have these conversations, Black folks and there's also, I guess there's just another population of folks. When you talk about like Black LGBTQ folks, they've got a voice that needs to be heard because they're feeling the oppression from within our community, and then they're also not getting their needs addressed within the LGBTQ movement as well. So they're kind of out here on their own island. So I think there's definitely a conversation to be had. And generally, I don't really have issues with it. I think the one issue I tend to come up with, especially in the trans conversation, is this idea of when you see like when you see a trans, when you see a woman or a man who wants to become a woman, so a trans, whatever the description is, I don't follow the pronouns and how everything goes. I can't follow, but I can kind of describe what I mean. So when a man wants to become a woman, when they start competing against women in sports, right? That's when I start that. Like, that's the one area I've got an issue. I think that's fucked up. I think if you're a guy and you end up competing against women because now you identify or you attempted to make the transition to being a woman, that's fucked up. And I think it's also interesting within the context of Dave's special, where the trans community was pissed off when he was joking, talking about being approached by, I don't know if it was a butch woman or like a trans woman in a club, and she told me, stop talking to my chick. And he was like, I had to beat her ass basically. And so like they were pissed off. They're like, he's over here talking about beating up a woman. Like, okay, I get it. That's cool. You can be upset about that, but you don't have a problem with a trans woman who's formerly a man who's an MMA fighter beating the shit out of women, right? So like, you don't have a problem there, but you have a problem with the joke that Dave Chappelle is telling as part of his comedy. But literally, you have a former guy out here participating in a combat sport, which is MMA, giving the business to women.
So like, I want to jump in just a little bit to say, how do I want to frame this? I think for the purpose of the conversation, we can look at these instances where it's inconsistent. It's okay for this to happen in this context, but not okay for this to happen in this context. But I think at the end of the day, it does go back to those labels, right? Because how is a black woman supposed to feel when a white male in drag can emulate a black woman's behavior and it's acceptable, but a black woman can't even go into work in her being herself? She has to assimilate, she has to code switch, she has to change her hair. But here, white transgender woman gets woman of the year. You feel me? So, there are going to be these issues where you're like, well, what if? And like you said, we're not comparing struggles, but I think it all begins with this label. And I believe, unfortunately, when I definitely see our sisters and brothers, especially our sisters who are, within the LGBT community, they're Black women. They have to deal with what goes on in the inner community as well as the outer community. But I see so many of their conversations support the white narratives against Black men, against the Black community, even when it comes to an issue of LGBTQ women, that supersedes being Black. In some cases, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm reading. And so where my thing is, at what point do we really, like, I guess that's the whole point of the conversation. At what point do Black people just put aside all of our differences and get on the same page? Because the oppressor is the oppressor, and you're using their language to even be at war with people who look like you. And I'm not going to minimize their experience, because I'm not a Black LGBTQ woman, and I have not lived that where I'm feeling like ostracized or rejected by family or community or otherwise. But what I'm saying is, a lot of that anger, and I think that's what it is, all of our anger towards what white people have done to us is we're just firing it on each other. Because in a word, we need to heal. And until we can do that and start seeing each other, regardless of our labels, we fucked up. Because we going wherever it feels good.
Yeah, and I think the conversation is similar to the one that we've had when we talk about feminists, right? Like, so I mean, especially white feminists. We talked about for years how white feminism piggybacked off the civil rights movement, effectively achieving their goals and then abandoning the same compatriots, whether it be black women or even Black men, as a part of the civil rights movement. You see that happen oftentimes. So I think it's natural for Black folks to question any other movement. Like, okay, well, what's your agenda here? Like, collectively, right? And that, I don't think that necessarily alienates the Black folks within our community that identify as either woman or LGBTQ. I don't think that's necessarily what we're saying. And I think because the conversation sometimes surrounds, well, you're asking me to choose between the two. I'm not asking you to choose between the two. I'm just asking you to recognize the historical priority that the society places on your race over everything else, and the oppression that they attach to that, right? I mean, so you can correct for all these other things, but the reality is, if you don't correct for this issue, my personal feeling is, if this country does not deal with this original sin of dealing with racism and how Black folks have been treated since, and candidly Native Americans as well, have been treated since the inception of this country, you're never going to be able to resolve fully these other conversations. Because the difference, I think, is the LGBTQ community, they get pissed off about shit, but the reality is they do have a significant amount of political capital and power, right? So the level of oppression is not the same. It's not as systemic. Now, I don't want to minimize, because I know there's a lot of issues within that community as far as like just the violence that's perpetuated against Black LGBTQ folks or white LGBTQ folks and trans folks. I understand that that's out there, so I'm not minimizing that part. But beyond that, when you talk about the systemic oppression, I don't know how much of that I really see out here, and maybe I'm just being naive to it because it doesn't impact me. But what I do see is I see there being a concerted effort towards representation of that particular community and almost everything at a much faster pace than we ever saw for Black folks. I mean, shit. Let's talk about the idea that we legitimately just got a lead Marvel character in Black Panther. It was a big deal that we had a Black character that was mainstream, and then it made some money. How long has it, in comparison, how long has it taken for them to make sure that they have an LGBTQ? Because it's because of the capital that is behind that community, the within Hollywood, behind everybody, and the idea that they can really push that agenda. And that's what Dave's talking about. He's talking about there's a level, and candidly for us, it's a level of jealousy. Like, we're a little bit jealous. Like, fuck, we've been struggling in this bitch since we got here, and we can't. First of all, we can't get any sustained allyship. But you guys want to capitalize off of our energy. But then, like, to Cam, to your point, there is this attack even within the LGBTQ community or the feminist community. There's an attack on specifically like Black men. You're absolutely right about that. Like, there's this, and it's particularly against straight Black men. I don't know what it is, and it's within the context of this conversation about Black masculinity. You see these trends on Twitter. I mean, it's aggressive, and I ain't sensitive, so I ain't too worried about it. But the reality is, it's out there, right? Yeah. So I mean, it's the conversation that needs to be had. And from the sisters I talk to, they have their own issues even within the feminist community as far as that particular movement not addressing their own needs. So the common denominator is your Blackness has been the main thing that has affected your ability to achieve success in the society. And I don't know that somebody's sexual orientation has had the same impact on that. Go ahead, Seth.
There's a lot
of... I go back to we've had these conversations before. The solution is, like Cam said, we all need to get on the same page. And that page is dinero. That page is reparations. Pay us what you fucking owe, and we can give us our land that we've built, that we've created. We can rebuild our society, and we can go from there. As we're trying to assimilate to this. Go ahead.
No, go. I want you to finish your whole thought.
Assimilate to this culture, and I've said this before on here. 400 years ain't that long. This country's not that old. We're just not fitting. We're not fitting. We have to. I mean, at some point, we have to get on the same page. And I'm not talking about the four of us. I'm talking about all of us. Have a leader with some directions. Leadership with directions. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Karen.
Well, I think you actually where you ended is a perfect place to pick that up. I think we're looking for someone to lead us when really, so we hear the word monolith. We're not a monolith people. No, we're not, because at this rate, just as many Black people are living in suburban communities as they are the hood. You know what I'm saying? Like we're kind of moving how we want to move. So we're going to, again, as I was saying before, we all have these different experiences. However, we are quick to distance ourselves from one another and someone else's struggle, because I mean, to hear a Black person kind of dismiss racism because they never experienced it. Wow. Like, have you ever picked up a book? Do you ever see how this is problematic, whether you have experienced it or not? And did you experience it and not know you were experiencing it because you're not like those other Black people?
There you go.
Right.
You feel
me?
So when we continue to cut each other down like that because we're not even identifying, them ain't my Black people. Them ain't my people. And it shows up in the workplace. We can't.
Well, who are they talking to, man? They're talking to appease the majority. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, they're talking at us or at the common Black folk, but they're talking to appease the majority, whether they're listening or not. That's who they're doing, and I'm saying that's not working.
No, and it's not.
They have to get on the same page as everybody else.
I think one of the hardest things for us to be able to do is unplug and unlearn. But I think there are a lot of subsectors of the Black community within America who are finding ways to work together, who are finding ways to build together, who, you know, are defying the lies. I don't necessarily agree with straight Black pride. And when I say it like that, I understand a legacy. For me, a value system, there is a legacy that and Black men and Black women need to be partnered together. But that doesn't negate if someone isn't heterosexual. It doesn't say you have less value. But we do economics, right? The political, the economical, that has everything to do with your household structure and the infrastructure of your household. And if you can't even put Black men and Black women together, even in more of a partnership community type of situation, not romantic, how do we even work together to benefit the community? Because we need all hands on deck. I've seen these systems. I've seen these school systems. They treat Black men one way, they treat Black women the other way, and both of them are getting played. Black women are being pushed out. Black men, if you don't dance to the tune of the white person who is in charge, if you aren't who they want you to be, they'll give you some time to get it together, but eventually you'll be let go. So how do we work together? How do we put our differences aside? Gender to gender. It don't matter who you fucking. How do we put our differences aside?
You have to agree on the common enemy, and that's what we don't do.
What'd you say?
You have to agree on the common enemy. So if you don't agree on the common enemy, this will never happen. So as everybody was sitting here talking, yeah, as everybody was sitting here talking, I was looking up the definition of LGBTQ. So here's the thing. It's hard to get somebody to understand your position when it's even hard to understand your definition. So it is now this, and I'm learning something here. So you have lesbian, you have bisexual, you have gay, you have transgender, and at one point in time, the Q stood for queer. Now the Q,
questioning.
No, that's what it is now.
Oh, okay.
At one point in time, it stood for queer, and growing up, queer was a slur. So they were even able to change the queer to questioning. They got the slur out of it in a short amount of time. Now the trans part, I
didn't even know.
Yeah, see, that's why I say I'm learning something new. So that in itself is just amazing. You know, we've been saying nigga forever, and we can't get people to stop saying nigga. They got people to stop saying queer like that and changed it to question it. So
well, but I will say this is in the definition. However, when you're looking at the inner community, and I'm a bystander, but I have enough close relations to understand that there are conversations that are just like the ones we're having, right? That, you know, you got gay people and lesbian people going up because you're not the right type of gay, or you're not the right type of, and queer would almost be the equivalent, like you said, to nigga, because they will call each other queer, you know, and they will identify as queer. And so it's one, and again, it goes back to labels. What do these labels actually mean?
Well, that's what I was getting at. It you know, it's a label. It made me go and look up the definition of trans. So within the definition is denoting or relating to a person whose sense of personal identity and gender does not correspond with their birth sex. So here's where the facts lie. Your birth sex is the fact. No matter what you personally identify with, your birth sex. So you can say, okay, gender is a construct and it's made up, and then, you know, you were told what a boy is and what a girl is, but it's technically put the biology into it. Male, female. Let's just go to that point. That is the fact. Now, if it's a personal identity, that means it's your own. So within saying that, you are requesting people to honor what you identify with. That's a request. It's not when you're having this struggle and you be like, our fight is this and our fight is that. That does not that does not factually hinder your existence. I don't necessarily agree with the whole point of the struggles are similar. Where I'm at, the struggles are the struggles, but they're not similar, and trying to make them similar is a little bit disingenuous because, as you alluded to earlier, these white folks that are trans, either direction, it doesn't matter, that are trans,
they're still white.
They still white. At the end of the day, if they wanted to, they can go and hide behind their whiteness and move about the country.
Or just ambiguously take, right. Or ambiguously take advantage of nobody knowing what the fuck is going on, right? Correct. And I think, man, that's the point, right, Greg? What you're talking about. But what you will receive pushback on, Greg, now is, and I found this in kind of just, you know, the conversations I've seen going on. There's people out who are trying to present data as if sex, and I know the difference between sex and gender. So sex is the biological way you're born, just physically, versus gender being the social construct of male, female, gender roles, whatever it may be. But there is a movement of quote unquote science. I don't know that it actually supports what people are saying, but this notion that even within the context of the biology, as children or even as fetuses are developed, that the idea of the biology is it's on a spectrum and it's non-binary, right? So meaning that it's not necessarily as easy as we make it out to be. So I think that's an interesting conversation. But the only reason why I think it's an interesting conversation is I think when you do see that happen in nature, or for instance, let's say you have somebody who may look masculine or feminine, but they're born with male opposite parts or whatever it may be, or whatever the biology is. We would say in general that those particular cases are anomalies, right? Those are outliers. By and large, everything tends to line up for the most part. So I think what's interesting is that within that movement, there's an attempt to normalize an outlier or an anomaly, right? And to your point, Greg, I think really where it really boils down to is the fact that you're trying to use this anomaly or this outlier or this minority, and I guess by definition minority, but you're trying to make it more mainstream and therefore equate the two struggles when, as you said, as a Black person, unless I'm racially ambiguous, we can't talk about Derrick Rose's fiance, but
and her racist ass. Okay.
But we can't hide. I can't walk into a room and hide my Blackness, right? There's Correct. Immediately there's baggage that comes along with that from their perspective and not from my perspective, perhaps, because I look at my race positively, but there's certainly some baggage that I have to deal with from the fact of what I bring into the room that I can't necessarily hide. Whereas if I'm, let's throw the transsexual part out of it, or whatever it may be, but within the context of being lesbian, gay, bisexual, questioning, you can walk into a room as a white person that identifies that way, and nobody will ever know, short of there being some sort of overt behavior or something like that, where you're acting a particular way where it might call into question what's going on, or you're dressing in a particular way that would lead somebody to believe where you're clearly like a 6'9" guy with hairy arms or something like that, but you have like a wig on or something like that and a dress, where somebody's like, okay, something's going on here, then somebody can make a judgment about you. But outside of those circumstances, you can't really you can't make judgments about anybody. So therefore, there's a built-in advantage that those particular communities have. Which, to your point, Seth, I don't know because I haven't looked into this issue, but I would imagine that goes to the point of how they've been able to achieve the financial successes that they've been able to achieve and develop the financial capital that they've been able to develop because they've been able to, whether it's wrong or right, they've been able to hide within those particular communities to achieve upward mobility, to get that capital and that influence, and then be able to get the quick results that they get now. I think that's really the distinction between the two movements. We can't covertly move our way up these ladders and then say, surprise, come out the closet, I'm lesbian, I'm gay, I'm bisexual, but I'm in charge of NBC, right? Or I'm in charge of CBS, and you didn't know that because I never told you that, but now you can't do shit about it. Right now, you may still have to deal with social media, like comments backlash, where some redneck is out here talking shit about you and your sexuality, but who gives a fuck when you still control the media or the medium that you're talking about? So when you talk about the power that they wield, I think it's a result of, for better or worse, being able to keep that shit quiet, move up that ladder, accumulate that capital, and now wield that capital in a way that you can quickly target particular instances of oppression or things like, in this case, try and cancel people like Dave Chappelle. Right.
Well, we got to look at it's weird too, because you have, I feel like what you described, for the most part, you're describing the white executive who can navigate solely based on their skin tone and their sexuality, gender, or preference or anything comes into question. But I think that also when we're looking at, and so since we're kind of looking at Dave Chappelle, when we're looking at the entertainment industry, Hollywood, you even go back to disco queens, as they used to call them, so the LGBT, the white gay community has a large influence in fashion and entertainment and music. Dave Chappelle, I don't think he's ever worn a dress, but he was Men in Tights.
Well, no, but Dave has talked about that before. I think in an interview, it was either sometime after he declined that $50 million, he talked about that specifically, Cam, and I'll let you talk, but I just want to kind of bring that point. Dave specifically talked about that idea that when you look at black men in Hollywood, on how they force you to wear a dress or do whatever it may be, and perhaps the Men in Tight things was kind of walking that line, but from Dave's perspective, he says one of the reasons why he didn't really fully buy into Hollywood, because this notion that every black man you saw had to at some point kind of walk that plank, so to speak, right, where he puts on a dress, whether it be Martin Lawrence and Big Mama or whoever it is. Like, it always seems to be this idea of trying to, and he talked about this specifically, about trying to eliminate black masculinity, right, to feminize black men, and in order to be successful. So that's always been prevalent. So I agree with that. But go ahead. I didn't mean to totally.
No. But you hit that point, and so we have to kind of also look at what the industry is already. It's not so much that the LGBTQ community is pulling up real fast. We're looking at these headlines coming from people specifically in the entertainment sector, Hollywood. Now, when it comes to sports, we know sports and homosexuality has always been an issue, or a hot topic or controversial, so to speak. We recognize that. However, to your point, when you got executives who can navigate covertly, when you have Hollywood who has carved out, literally it is led by LGBTQ community, and in order for you to fit in, you have to be very accepting of that, and you have to go on camera, because now I'm watching television and you see a fine black man, and in one row, our boy who just died, when he was in Lovecraft Country, he was essentially a gay character, right? That his character was gay. So, but then that person goes on and does something where they're not gay, they're straight. And so this is the industry. You have to be comfortable with embracing homosexuality, whether it's your script or whether it's your community. But you don't necessarily, they have found every way to whitewash Black people in Hollywood. You see a lot of biracial characters now. You see a lot of, you know, Black kid, white mom, Black dad. You know what I'm saying? They found a way to, again, take out that imagery of a Black woman who looks like me and a Black man who looks like you. And we have healthy Black children, or even if it's a horror movie, you know what I'm saying? Can we get through the horror together? They're taking this image of Black man and Black woman being able to do anything together. And they found every kind of way to remix this, whether it's biracial, whether it's LGBTQ. And so again, at the end of the day, we still, because of our skin tone, there are so many facets of how oppression and racism impact us. And if we want allies, if the LGBTQ community wants allies in us, and again, I'll use the word jealous, I'll play along, advocacy work, traveling the country, working with these different intersectionality groups, right? And still feeling like when I'm with social justice warriors, all these air quotes I'm using, that Black people still have to find a voice even within a group of people who are supposed to stand for everyone's differences and everyone's plight and to be allies across the board. We still don't have those type of allies, even within that type of sector.
That's because, that's because white supremacy still acts as a gatekeeper. And that's what we're talking about in every movement. What Dave is talking about, and to get back to the special, he's talking about the influence of white supremacy. That's what he's talking about. White supremacy will impact every movement. And inevitably, you're more inclined to see like a white member of the LGBTQ community acting racist than you are potentially, I think, to see, I don't know. I mean, it's probably equal as far as like somebody Black being, homophobic or whatever it may be. I mean, there's other reasons for that. I think there's a religious component. But go ahead.
I was. Go ahead, sir.
No, I'm just saying, like, the racism is accepted, whereas the Black homophobicism or whatever, however you say that, isn't. It's shunned upon. You're going to be canceled. Whereas if you're racist, you get what Jon Gruden got until he stepped over that line. You know what I'm saying?
Let me give you an example.
Before we get off the line tonight, I need to make this point.
Okay.
Everybody is so mad at Dave Chappelle right now for talking about this in his special, saying, hey, there's this issue here. But what people didn't and I feel like people are intentionally looking past that. Mm-hmm. It's not saying I have a friend who is Black. He's saying, here is a person that I connected with. This is our story. And our story showed us how human he was, or they were, and how human I am. And what I saw was a person who needed a stage. And I gave that person a stage. And then when that person passed away, I decided to take care of his progeny the best way that I could. And it's not because, oh, you're a trans person and I want to make this statement. What he's saying is, and that was his whole point, we're all having a human experience. Right. And for some reason, nobody is understanding
nobody's
that.
Hearing that at all.
They're not
nobody's hearing that.
They're just not accepting it. That's all that is. Right. Because he basically said the person that passed away, he said, I don't think that person necessarily passed away from the things I said to them. It was the backlash possibly from their own community that might have pushed them over the edge.
Defended him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're Kim, you're absolutely right. And we talked about this before you guys even got on before the show. I don't feel like either people are watching snippets of the show and not actually watching the full show, or they're just hearing what they want to hear, which is what people do, right? People hear what they want to hear in order to push their agenda, but they definitely don't understand what the hell you're saying, because the whole point of the special was to point out, look, I don't have an issue with you. This is what we're talking about, and these are real issues that are going on. And I'm explaining exactly what it is I'm talking about. If people didn't understand what he's saying, I thought it was crystal clear. And matter of fact, after I saw the special, I was like, and maybe it's because that's not necessarily the community I'm identifying with, but I did not see the level of, I didn't see a show that warranted the level of vitriol that was being, pushed toward. I just didn't see. And some people will say, well, that's just a blind spot. But even when you hear people who identify in those communities start talking about the special, they start saying shit. You're like, he didn't say that. Like, a matter of fact, I remember hearing the episode. I'm like, he absolutely did not say what this person is saying he said. And now they're spinning it and taking it that way. Matter of fact, they would they would combine stories. Like, they're like, basically like, Dave's the reason why this person committed suicide. Like, you literally did not listen to any part of that story or understand what the fuck he was talking about.
Right.
So I mean, there's no way. It's not possible.
And to me, that's when it becomes willful. And so to kind of his story, listening to this narrative, the LGBTQ community, the trans community already had an issue with him. So it wasn't anything that he could say to where they wasn't already on go.
And he said that, right? He's talking, this dates back to long before even these Netflix specials. Like, they've had an issue with him since, whenever. But Dave don't give a fuck. That's part of the reason why. I mean, at the end of the day, he's authentic and he's true to himself, and he's just going to speak what he believes to be his truth. And I think that's why he's able to navigate these waters. Like, when you're being intellectually honest and politically honest about certain things, you're not coming from a place of being mean or punching down. And I think that's how you know it, because people who are mean and punching down, so to speak, they will back off their position eventually. They'll be like, okay, I don't want to deal with this bullshit. Dave is coming from, and you said it accurately, Cam, a place of a human experience, right? This idea of we are all humans having this experience, and understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. Because as a Black person, I'm tired of dealing with the things that I have to deal with, and people not understanding these issues and understanding, why these things are impacting me and why I'm saying the things that I'm saying.
And to that point, he's also talking about the so-called freedoms that are being oppressed all the way around, because they're going, we have a freedom to be who we are. Well, we also have a freedom to say what the fuck we want to say in this country, if you agree with it or not. Like, I don't agree with anything some Nazi white supremacist says. They can say whatever the fuck, as long as you don't fucking touch me or my family, I'm good. You can say what the fuck you want to say. It doesn't have to be right, and it doesn't have to be something I agree with. They are sitting there going, you're oppressing our freedom to be who we want to be, in the same context of literally taking away his freedom to say what he needs to say or what he wants to say. And if you did not watch the whole thing, if you saw a part of it and you turned on Twitter or got on Instagram and then you just, cowered in the corner at the LGBTQ community saying, well, Dave is this and he's transphobic and blah, 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 please get out of this conversation until you see the whole thing. Because if you watch the whole thing and actually listened to his whole special, he was not saying half the shit people have said on Twitter. He even said it. He was like, Twitter killed me, but Twitter's not a real place. So you're talking to a guy, when they say, who the fuck does he think he is? He said it. I'm the guy that walked away from $50 million. So if we're talking dollars and cents here, if you're talking to a man who sat there and said, fuck $50 million, there's nothing you could say to him that will sit here and hurt him. You can't cancel a person like that. He walked away. And so, you just can't.
But and I want you to say this one more time, Greg, because I think there's an even bigger lesson for us as a collective. You can't cancel someone who has already walked away and made a personal sacrifice because they're not about to sell their soul. You can do it too. And most of us are not going to do that. Now, granted, he had a whole bunch of money, so walking away from $50 million was like, that just makes me more rich. Right. But when we're not willing to make personal sacrifices, I'm to the point where how do you say anything when it comes to what we're experiencing right now?
You know what I think is funny is this idea. So I remember reading a GQ article about this shit, and I'm not sure if the person who wrote the article was a member who identified LGBTQ or not. I can't remember, but basically the person was like, somewhere in the article, like, I feel like such a fool for liking Dave Chappelle for so long, which means that you were cool with the Chappelle show, right? But the closer pissed you off. So when Charlie Murphy's like, bitch, show me your titties, or whatever it may be.
That shit was funny and fine.
Whatever it may be, like that, all the racist shit that, and which is the reason why Dave walked away from it, because it was getting super fucking ridiculous. Right. And he was like, all that shit was cool for you, right? All this shit was comfortable and it's funny. It was all satire, it's all comedy then, right? It's all, we're not gonna take it too serious. But the minute he jumps in on in this particular stream, it becomes an issue, right? Now all of a sudden, you know, the closer, which I took to the life for the life of me, I can't understand how people took it so much offense to it, because I thought it was fairly benign, actually. But I mean, I think he's actually been a lot more aggressive in other comedy specials. But
yeah,
you're right, Cam. It's basically folks who had an initiative or agenda, and we're in this culture now where it's like, we're gonna figure out who's next to move on to cancel that we can go after. But more importantly, somebody like Dave, and to your point, Cam, and to your point, Greg, this idea of somebody who legitimately does not give a fuck. And when you're intellectually, economically, or whatever other descriptor you want to use, when you're free in every way that you can imagine, people don't like it. When they can't control what you say, or they can't control your narratives, that you become a significant threat to a lot of people, whether that be the mainstream, whether that be the folks in power, or the folks with an agenda. Like, that becomes a problem when you're truly free. And Dave is truly free because he legitimately don't give a fuck about anything, and he doesn't need anybody.
He started that special by saying, "Yo, this is gonna be my last special for a minute. Like, I'm ready to walk away from this shit again."
Mm-hmm. Well, he fulfilled his Netflix contract. I think that's what he meant.
Right.
Because yeah.
Well, he meant a bunch of things. I think he fulfilled his contract, but he also knew by the end of that special, he knew
right.
there was going to be something.
He's still touring, so he's still out here. I know out here in Ohio, actually, he's opening up a comedy club in Yellow Spring. So I do know that. And I know he's trying to do a lot for local comics, and he's trying to do a lot for the Yellow Springs, Ohio community. Just trying to make sure they're economically sound. But I know from what I know of him, I know he's out here touring. I know he's still doing his thing. So he's still doing shows. He's fulfilled his Netflix contract, and I think he doesn't feel like dealing with that shit. He's like, I fulfilled my contract. Fuck it, let's move on. It's like Tupac when he was trying to get out from underneath Suge Knight, and he was trying to spit out all them albums and shit. He was like, I'm about to get up out of here. Unfortunately, Suge probably had him killed. But
wow, all out of fucks.
But I think this is.
I would just like to say that Mr. Suge Knight, this is Jim Clyburn talking to him. I did not say any of those things. That was not me or
Suge Knight is the one motherfucker that still scares everybody. Him and Candyman, motherfuckers be like, "Hey man, like,
Suge Knight is in jail, and people still like, no, I ain't saying shit about shit. Suge, that wasn't me."
Go ahead, Cam.
No. It's I'm just thinking, like, we still have to be cognizant of even how we have these conversations, because like I said, well, in my opinion, Dave is the GOAT for that reason. You know, being able to walk away, stand on your own narrative, stand on your own square, know who you are, and really not truly have to sell out, whether you do things that the Black community agree with or not. You know, you're genuine and you're solid. That being said, I think we also have to really stop feeding into these headlines. I feel like too many of us are willing to kind of say, oh, well, if you're not doing what Dave Chappelle did, then you're a coon or you're this or you're a sellout. And I just feel like right now, and I want to say that because we get on the, we get on the airwaves and we kind of look at where we are as Black Americans and, especially in the face of white supremacy. And it a lot of times feels hopeless. I'm gonna just be honest. Like, we started in our pre-recording. Right now, I've always felt this way in these white spaces, working in social services and human services and community engagement, because I know that these people are not committed to making impacts in my community. But I thought it was just kind of me, and I thought people were fucking with me. But now I'm hearing Black women, at least, and even Black men, are being impacted by this white culture. And I feel like the more vocal we get, the more that these conversations are being sparked, the more that corporations are saying, hey, let us be inclusive. Let us celebrate Black lives. Let us celebrate Black excellence and achievement. I think these white people who didn't deserve their privilege, who didn't work for their privilege and only got to where they were was because of their skin tone, they're digging their heels in and they're making this shit miserable for everyone. And so when I'm pointing out that, we can't be the catalyst to keep making shit miserable for each other. We can't keep exploiting each other. Blaxploitation is done. Like, we got to get out of that, because that's the only way we can really start trying to get on the same page. But right now, we're exploiting each other too much.
Well, and Dave talked about that in his special. He talked about the story of the Black slave that was released, and what he knew to be success, the model of success. He wound up following that model because that's what he saw as the model for success. And the model for success for him was to own slaves. So you got this nigga who just got free, turned right around once he got some land and got slaves, because that's the model of success. Successful people have slaves. The same thing works now. Exploitation of Black people is profitable.
Yes.
And that's the model.
Well, but he's also, so Dave is also speaking to a hierarchy of struggle. I mean, so people can talk all this shit about our struggles are equal, blah, 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 but they're not. And you want to know why they're not, is because within the context of Dave's special, he's basically, he actually pushes everybody's button in the special, but he doesn't intentionally. This is why it's so genius, right? Because he does it intentionally within the context of seeing which particular button takes precedent over everything else. And what you found is the button that has taken precedent over everything else is the LGBTQ button, because that's the one that everybody's kind of, that's the one with the riding the most momentum. But he still had the space Jew joke. He had a bunch of shit about dealing with women, and he had
Sojourner Truth.
And Sojourner Truth. He had the coronavirus Chinese joke. So he had all types of shit in there. But think about that for a second. The shit that is making waves is this conversation about trans and LGBTQ folks. And I think Dave's comedy is an experiment in trying to get you to point out exactly there is a hierarchy of these struggles, and he's trying to point out that's what we're talking about. And ultimately, the idea that we're not talking about any of the racial stuff or the racial undertones of what he's talking about within the context of his comedy, that's not getting the attention from these particular communities. Because I took a look, and I didn't see a lot of thought pieces on the struggle of Black folks within the LGBTQ community. What I did see is a bunch of Black LGBTQ identifying folks who were attacking Dave for coming out against that particular community. And I thought that was interesting.
I believe it.
And I just thought that was interesting. The fact that I was like, because I kept expecting for the folks who were in those communities and in those spaces to find the strength to be like, you know what, Dave has provided an opportunity for me to talk about the struggles I have within that particular community, right? And you have not seen that, which is the point, right? That's the point he's trying to make, is that this idea that, my Blackness is way more offensive and a threat to you, or not as important to you than anything else. And that's why Dave's comedy can be so genius at times, is that even that's when he's joking about shit, he's like, oh, it's gonna get a lot worse than this, right? because he's like, look, I'm literally gonna touch on everything you say I shouldn't talk about. I'm about to talk about it, and we're about to see where these chips fall. And now I think the other reason why it's been there's been so much negative pushback from folks is because he's attacking a lot of these liberal politically correct buttons that typically liberals are offended because they thought Dave was a part of this Hollywood community, and they feel betrayed. Like, well, wait a minute, you're supposed to be part of this entertainment industry, which I don't know why they would think Dave would give a fuck about any of the stuff that they care about. But it's interesting that this is coming along at a time when Black folks are starting to question their allegiance to liberals and Democrats in general, just politically as well, because of being left behind when it comes to, we talked about this last episode, Seth and Cam, this idea just, within the Biden administration and there not being any apparent Black agenda. I think it's interesting that you're seeing this kind of parallel conversation where Black folks are challenging these liberal allegiances that we have and saying, look, it's not enough for you. It's not enough for you all just to come in and get our vote to get Biden in office. And we have yet to see anything substantive. And I know there's a conversation about the HBCU funding, and we talked a little bit about that last show, but I do want to correct that conversation for folks. Like, to be clear, there was never 40+ million of funding to go to HBCUs. There was a earmark of funds that were supposed to go to a bunch of schools, which actually were PWIs as well, where they might have had significant portions of Hispanics or Asians or other minority communities, but it got characterized as HBCU funding being cut. But that's not. But I don't want to go off on that tangent too much, but the Biden administration has some answers because they definitely have not done what they should be doing for Black folks. But back to the point that we're talking about, I think we just need. Dave's special was right on point of highlighting the disparities when it comes to race, and folks are proving his point by jumping on the bandwagon. And I would encourage anybody who's listening and to leave a comment, shoot us an email if there are think pieces out here that I've missed that deal with the struggle of Black LGBTQ folks within that particular movement. I know I've seen the think pieces of Black feminists. I know I've heard those conversations. I've heard that struggle. Cam, I think you've spoken to those issues at times on this particular show. And we know, Bell Hooks has spoken to that. All types of Black feminists have spoken to those particular issues. But I just think that's very interesting that, and there's still time, right? But the fact that everything I've seen out there is just violently attacking Dave and trying to cancel him and get him off of Netflix. And I just think that's interesting.
To say, going back to how the money, follow the money here, Netflix, because a lot of people thought that shit was going to work. A lot of people sat there and went, Netflix is going to succumb to this, and they're going to succumb to the pressure, and they're going to take Dave off. Netflix sat there and looked at it and sat there and said, well, we had $100 million investment in Dave Chappelle, and that investment paid off. The money says we're not taking that shit off the air. That's the money. So they knew Dave Chappelle's worth. And they can sit there and say, we just agree with freedom of speech and the art form of comedy. They can say that all they want in the press, but at the end of the day, Dave Chappelle is money. This contract is over, but that doesn't mean there's another contract that can't be made later on down the line. So,
well, I don't know why people thought they were going to get it off anyway. I mean, shit. I mean, they had to clear it in the first place, right? So they had to clear it in the first place, and they had to see the special and say, oh, Dave's on this shit. And I don't know what the contract calls for. I'm sure Dave, knowing what he went through with Comedy Central and the Chappelle show, I know he had his shit together legally and probably said, I can do what the fuck I want to do, and those are going to be the terms of it. So they probably had to comply with it. But
oh yeah, there's definitely somebody sitting in Netflix office going, okay, we're approximately going to lose this many subscribers. As long as we don't hit this number over here, we're fine. They have those.
Well, here's the thing. How often does Netflix pull? I mean, they're always pulling some shit, trust me. But how often does Netflix pull some shit that is quote unquote controversial?
I haven't heard it, but I thought about it within the context. we recently watched Marlon Wayans had a special. It was terrible, by the way, but on
It's always terrible.
well,
that's a whole. It just is not good.
Well, it was because it was on HBO Max. Okay, so I was like, okay, and I had seen him on The Breakfast Club, and he just talked about the idea that HBO Max. Those folks were like, okay, you can't say that joke. He had said something, and believe it or not, it had to do with the LGBTQ community, right? So like they actually cut the joke. He says really, and matter of fact, what's even crazier is he on the interview with the Breakfast Club, he told the joke, and the Breakfast Club muted it out as well. Like so, I never you never even heard the joke because the Breakfast Club was like, okay, we're not gonna even air the joke on social media or anywhere. But apparently HBO Max cut it out. So there's a difference, right, between Netflix. Netflix, my guess is Netflix probably would not have done that. They probably would have just let it ride. But somebody like HBO Max, which is that's not a Disney affiliate, but I think it might be what Warner Brothers.
It's still HBO. It's still the parent company that gave us The Wire. So
I'm with you, but I think it's more about Dave than it is about the platform, the streaming service. I think we know what to expect from Dave, whereas the Wayans,
the Wayans were the opposite.
Different people, different.
Well, I mean, I think also does that speak to his influence because maybe the Wayans just don't have the type of influence to be controversial.
Right. Well, they do because I mean, in theory, technically, you couldn't put on In Living Color today. You couldn't do the show.
Yeah.
There's a.
I'm saying like the Men on Film.
It was controversial for its time. It was influential. I mean, it's still one of the most influential shows.
Correct, but you couldn't do Men on Film.
You could run that today.
You couldn't do Men on Film today.
Okay. Well, I don't know because
you know what I'm saying? Like they're
you couldn't do Handyman.
Well, we were talking when you guys were.
You couldn't do Vera. Jim Carrey is Vera.
Well, when you guys were talking earlier,
you couldn't
and we were talking about men wearing dresses and like you said, the Antoine and all of this. We got to think about it. Black men right now in the comedy space where they're using YouTube and social media as their jump offs with these videos. All they're doing is emulating women. Shit makes me sick. I don't really find it funny.
Right.
And Marlon was white chicks, wasn't he? That was them, right?
Yeah, that was them.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know, but I'm just saying, I think it was more about Dave being able to get away with this than Mark. I mean, we ain't gonna have you playing both sides of the coin now, Negro. We paid you for this.
Ha! Point well taken.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, there's a difference in, like I said, comedy styles. Like if it was I hate to say this, but if it was a Mark Curry type of comedian and he came out and said everything Dave said, then people would have been like,
it'd have been canceled next lifetime.
But I'm saying, like,
where did you pull him from?
I'm just saying, like, they know what they expect from Hanging with Mr. Cooper. If Hanging with Mr. Cooper did Dave said,
right, Mark Curry, where the hell he pulled him from?
Yeah. Hey, he's still out there. But anyway, if he
get
did
a Martin
that
Lawrence or a Kevin Hart.
Well, no, because Martin, because you had Def Comedy Jam with Martin.
Yeah.
You had Def Comedy Jam with Martin.
Your point is well taken. Sinbad, all them brothers.
Right.
But what was their comedy style? Because once again, we've already established that it's acceptable to talk about niggas in any shape, form, or fashion.
Well, I was about to say, technically, if you look at some of the actual, because who has Def Comedy Jam? HBO Max? Somebody has it going again. Some streaming service. I can't remember.
Does. I know Prime does.
It's Prime. Okay. If you look at some of that old Def Comedy Jam shit, it was like, wow, Martin, like, okay, you really went in. Oh,
I mean, but can we talk about the idea that it's comedy, right? Like,
that's the art
part
form.
of these comedians is they're always pushing limit, and I understand you can go too far on some stuff like that. But we all know it feels different when it becomes like, I'm not going to just say mean, but for instance, like when it stops being comedy. So for instance, the guy who played Kramer in Seinfeld, when he started going on that racist tirade at a comedy club. He was just being
there was no
racist
joke back there.
It wasn't a joke. He was just talking about some racist ass shit, right? And so, but beyond that, you know, within the context of comedy, there's a lot of shit we'll let ride. I've listened to white comedians make black jokes like that shit was fucking. If it's funny, it's funny. Like,
if it's funny, it's funny.
Right? And black folks can take a joke better than anybody. Like, well, it's kind of true. Like, so I mean, but I mean, it's comedy. I mean, can you imagine Richard Pryor today? Like, these people would lose their fucking mind. But
well, that's what I was about to say. The way comedy is set up, it's the only place you could be mean. Hell, that's the whole point of a roast. It's the only art form where you can be mean, and you're supposed to just take it with a grain of salt. And now they're coming after the one art form where you can release and say what the fuck you want to say and go, just joking. They're coming after that art form. And if you don't have that space, that's
I just think it's crazy that they can come after Dave and how it's characterized or how it's framed as, well, you're creating a space for violence against trans individuals, right? That's one of the critiques. But, you know, it's comedy, right? So this is just comedy. But meanwhile, this friend who got drug on Twitter, and which ultimately those social justice warriors, so to speak, you know, they drug her on Twitter to the extent that, and he made the point. He doesn't necessarily know if that's what sent her over the edge, so to speak, but it certainly contributed to it. But this idea that, you know, his comedy can be offensive to the point where it creates this toxic environment, but somehow these social justice warriors on Twitter, that you're attacking people directly and mercilessly and continuously for however long in a society where we constantly consume social media, somehow that doesn't have as much of an impact as a comedy special that you don't have to watch, right? But and social media people constantly have access to.
That goes to the difference in generations, because we grew up in a generation where you had to be thick-skinned. Like, literally, somebody's going to always not like you. Somebody's going to always say something about you. You have to just throw that shit off. This generation is based and built on likes. Literally on social media, hitting a button. I like this. I like that. You like me. I follow you. You follow me. Everything is based on likes and being accepted. So the first negative energy that comes their way, most folks don't know how to handle it. And
but you know what? I'm not sure our generation knows how to handle that level of vitriol either. Because Greg, the reality is we didn't have to deal with social media to the level that these younger folks do, or people in general do now, because everybody's consuming social media at the same level. And that's why I think Dave makes a good point to say that Twitter's not a real place, right? And he's trying to speak to that issue, that leave the shit where it is, leave it on the fucking internet. But the problem is, you know, that may work for some folks, but for a lot of folks, they're constantly consuming the impact psychologically of the media that you consume on a regular basis is inevitable, right? You can't continue to consume that. And I can't imagine being, you know, somebody, like, think about being not even a celebrity, but you think about like the basketball players, people who have this direct contact to people all the time. People are constantly in your comment section. Like, you can always just turn it off, right? We come from a generation where we didn't have to live with that shit. We didn't come up with social media all the time, so we know a life without it, so we can turn it off. But these millennials and younger millennials, because apparently I'm considered a millennial.
You're an elder millennial, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to diminish it. I'm just saying it to the point of Twitter, like you said, it's not a real space. They could turn it off. Now, are they conditioned and trained to do it? That may be one thing. But in our generation, the bully was physically real. They were sitting in the classroom with you, next to you, bullying you, beating you up, whatever the fuck. The cyberbullying is part of the world we live in now. It's a different.
That shit is relentless.
And what's offensive, because like, as you guys are thinking, and we're talking about comedians, we're talking about old school comedians. I think one of the I had to watch it twice. The first time I watched it was trash, in my opinion.
What?
But I really saw the evolution of Coming to America. They took everything that was offensive back then. Like back then it was acceptable. Now it's offensive. And they shifted it to where they didn't really water it down. You know, they just kind of like course corrected. Mm-hmm. So instead of, you know, being misogynistic like it was when it first released, they found a way to make it more supportive of women and Black women. And so where do we go from here? Because I really appreciate your point, Rob. Comedy is supposed to be funny and offensive. And if you can't be offensive in comedy, where do our comedians go from here?
It's supposed to push the limits. And
yeah. Push the limits. I like that better. Push the limits, not necessarily offensive. It just happens to be offensive when you push the limits.
And comedy has always been a space where you can challenge some of these political philosophies, right? It's where people have it's the water cooler where we all get together and start talking about some of these political concepts and these ideas, and we challenge them, right? Within a context. And our comedians have always been thought leaders within the community because they're so smart, because they're on how they put shit together. And they put it together in a way that folks can consume as entertainment. But we talk about these things within the context of real world impact. And I think a lot of times it does get conversations going, and it challenges people to deal with some of these issues. I mean, think about the roast of Donald Trump by President Obama at the White House Correspondents' Dinner and all that type of shit. Like, you know, that's comedy, but he's addressing real life. It was his opportunity to address real life shit. So you're talking about the birther movement, to address all these things directly in a way where people, maybe they paid attention, maybe they didn't, but comedy is a way to do that. And you're right, it's the last place you can really do that without being considered, I don't even know what it is. I mean, confrontational. I mean, people just can't, and people will consider confrontation now talking directly about issues because everybody's passive aggressive. Like, people talk around issues all the time, and you can't talk about things directly now. If you talk about things directly, people look at you like, oh, why are you being so assertive and aggressive towards me in person, right? Like, that's a problem. But if you do it, people are more comfortable doing it on social media because they've got a keyboard next to them and they don't have to deal with the person face to face, and there's no fears, getting hit in the fucking mouth. Right?
That's what I was saying. You're not scared about getting hit in the mouth when you just typing away. So
that's a healthy fear, right?
You say some shit like that. Like, that's your point, Greg. You say some shit like that in the classroom, you getting folded.
How many times? Like, I can't tell you how many times. Like, there's been some shit. Like, there's some shit that Donald Trump would do from sometimes I'll be like, dude, if I seen this dude like face to face, I would just want to. I don't even have an articulate thing to say. I just want to hit him in his fucking mouth. Like, who the fuck are you talking to, right? Like, right. So I mean, but it's a joke, but it's real talk. It's like, sometimes I don't have words for you. Sometimes I just want to hit you in the mouth, and like, let's just see what happens. And I mean, some people will call that toxic masculinity. Like, oh, why does everything become physically aggressive? But
then I'm a toxic. I'll own that, because it's just sometimes we do have to temper ourselves. You talking real reckless to me. And if it wasn't for this space where you feel protected, I would drag your ass. I would dog walk your ass.
And sometimes that's needed. That might correct a lot of problems in society. Like, if you knew you was gonna get your ass whooped on some shit, you might not be as racist or passively aggressive, or keep you from getting an opportunity in a particular economic space. If you knew that if somebody you was interacting with was trying to fuck you over at work, if they knew that you was gonna hit them in their mouth and drag them out the parking lot, they might be like, you know what? I'm not going to do that because Cam.
I'm going to leave her alone.
Exactly.
Normalize smacking the shit out of them.
Normalize smacking the shit out of a motherfucker. I mean, real seriously, like, it's interesting, but I agree with what you guys are saying wholeheartedly. You can talk reckless because there's no consequence, but as we know, Black people don't have that liberty. We can't say what we want to say. We can't do what we want to do, because if I talk to you as a Black woman the way you talk to me as a white woman, you're going to consider me hostile. You're going to consider me angry and aggressive. And now y'all gonna work together systemically because I'm the bad force in the room. I'm the negativity in the room. But you talking to me like you really want this shit. Like, we can do this.
You want all the smoke.
Like, and it's insane. So we can't, this is how we've been conditioned. You know, thank God we talk about, you know, like we talk about the ancestors, but we're always, me and my sister are always reflecting on the women in our family and our legacy. And we started, you know, our family has an interesting legacy, but my grandmother didn't have anything. But what we do know is my grandmother, she was a protector. And she, you know, like, it was funny because my grandmother was like extremely violent. Like, she'll just beat your ass. You looked at me crazy, you gonna get your ass beat. And so are the women in my family a little bit more aggressive in our younger years? More than likely, yes.
Nah,
but we still learn how to temper ourselves. We're not that aggressive when it comes to white people. We know how to shut the fuck up when it comes to white people. Why? Right. Because our people told us, you will die if you look at a white person like this. You will die if you talk back to a police officer like this. So we're just trying to shut the fuck up.
I will say that shit can be corrective and it can be therapeutic, because there's been recently, I think since the election of Trump, since Trump was elected, I did find myself in my normal life as a lawyer, I did find myself in more verbal confrontations with other like old white lawyers from time to time, because they would talk out of pocket. And like every once in a while, like, and it happened like 2 or 3 times, and it would legitimately go to the street like, look, I don't know who you think you're talking to, but you probably need to watch your tone talking to me like that, because this is beyond just, because you know how they tend to get from time to time. And I know one time, and I put an email because he wasn't in front of me, because we were going back and forth, and a lot of times attorneys will tend to be passive aggressive over email. But I had to put in the email, I said, okay, I want you to keep that same energy next week in this deposition. And so when I see you, I want you to have the same energy. And he didn't know what it meant. He was like, same energy. And so like when I saw him, I said, so what was that you were talking about? X, Y, and Z? I didn't mean anything by that. I was just, you know how it goes. I'm just trying to make a point. Like, no, I don't know how this shit goes because I took offense to that. So what were you saying? And so, I mean, but you're right.
I definitely feel some post-Trump America happening with Black people. We not taking that shit no more.
Because it's on both sides. Like, because white folks are some of these Trumpers are in a certain space where they feel like they can say a bunch of shit. And then Black folks are definitely, Black folks are in a space where not only are they dealing with the racist Trump shit, but now they're also, well, they were before, but they're dealing with it again. This idea of realizing that even in the context of the Democratic movement or the liberal movement, your needs still not being answered within those movements as well. So now Black folks are just in the space where like, you know what? Fuck everybody. So like everybody can come get this smoke across the board, and we're gonna figure this shit out. Maybe we'll just, we talked about this last show, we'll just burn this whole bitch down and see how this shit turns out.
Yeah, I think they're just sitting in that space of ready to jump. Like if I heard Civil War. Yeah, okay then. And the mistake won't be honest, made.
I'm gonna be the first person to sign up, because I just kind of think we have to stop being so passive, and we have to stop putting our head down in the sand. I think we have to stop looking for people to speak for us. We have to stop looking for a leader to speak for us. You know how to move throughout your day, and if somebody doing something reckless or racist, how to correct that shit. You don't need somebody to go to a mic and have a press conference on your behalf.
Right. Right. I'm just, if it did happen, there's a lot of people just ready to be like, okay, we were nice about it. Now we just about to take the shit. You were so worried about us taking the shit in the first place. Now we about to take the shit. And truthfully, for all those Trumpers, this ain't even a black-white Civil War type thing. Look, if you want to start that shit, the rest of us will finish that shit. And you can have your own country. What we'll do is we'll move your ass to Wyoming, and you can build whatever fucking wall that you want to have, and you can have him lead your country. But we're going to take all the fucking resources, and good luck trying to survive.
Y'all gonna have geysers and shit.
But I think that's
And
really
you're gonna
how
need
we
a
have
passport.
to move. And I'm starting to see that. We're starting to see that. We're starting to see more Black collective impact. We're starting to see business to business, Black business to business partnerships and things of that nature, where I'm starting to hear more Black educators say, hey, we may need to start our own shit. And I stand on this. If we don't understand one thing, white folks have never been qualified to be in power. Slave owner didn't know shit.
Right.
He made his money because our ancestors had the technology to make him money. And when our ancestors were freed, he couldn't make that money no more. But now here we are making the money for him. So we have to understand we have the technology, we have the resources. We just got to trust each other.
Real quick, I just wanted to speak to the numbers because, Greg, you had mentioned this earlier, back to kind of the Dave show. Apparently, the Netflix CEO, so he's like, he didn't just say we're just a free speech platform. He was like, Dave is the most watched comedian in the history of Netflix.
I told you.
I think he had, this is the numbers. It said 10 million people have put on the closer since its debut, according to a person familiar with the viewer numbers. It said, we see him, he said, we see him as a unique voice, but can understand if you or others never want to watch the shows. But they would be like, basically like, but we ain't taking that shit off because this motherfucker had 10 million views and we're running that money. So you can figure that shit out. If you don't like it, that's cool, but see you when
somebody
I see
do.
Yep, that's what I said. They know he's profitable.
I love it because what they're saying is, even though it's purely driven, it's capitalism, they're still respecting the originator, you know, like, because that was also missing, which is why we don't have Prince with us anymore and Mike with us anymore. When Black people when people say, no, I am the talent, I am the resource, I am the money maker for you.
Get my shit. Yeah.
They end up being silent somewhere. So that's also a big up today, that you can stand in your power and then they give you the respect that you deserve because they see what you're doing for their company and for their platform and for their brand.
Right.
Because we just don't get that kind of support. Motherfuckers will run away from us as soon as shit hit the fan. So big ups to Netflix.
It is what it is. I mean, you know, it's money. Money is what it is. What it is. I just think the more I've dug into it, I can appreciate. I already knew the special was sophisticated, intellectual, and thought provoking. But you know, when you look at the layers and you really break it down, and you look at more importantly, you look at the reaction of folks. I mean, Dave gets it. He understands it. So I mean, we kind of, I don't want to necessarily conclude the topic unless we didn't. And it's funny, and I can appreciate the conversation we had because whenever you start talking about like the LGBTQ issue and the trans issue, sometimes the conversation devolves into like, okay, whether or not the biology of it, right? Like, are people trans? Are people gay? Are they lesbian? I don't think I'm not qualified to really speak to that because it's not necessarily something that impacts me, but I think we're all qualified to talk about it within the context of our own movement, our own civil rights movement, the achievements we're trying to reach, the equality we're trying to achieve, and within the context of that conversation. We haven't got this isn't necessarily a space I think where we would talk about the ideas of whether in fact things are binary versus non-binary. I think that's a conversation for other folks to have. Certainly, I don't know that I have enough information for that conversation.
Well, I mean, nobody on this platform right now, no one who is present identifies with that community. So none of us can actually speak to it, especially from a level of experience. Again, I know people, and I hate to say it like that. I have Black friends. That's how it always sounds to me. But the truth of the matter is, I have close people I have relationships with, people who I respect and I love dearly. And I don't want to see them hurt because this is the life that they identify with and that they love. But I will also say these same individuals don't sit here and try to punch down on nobody else either. Well, even though they have their experiences. And a lot of times, especially as a Black woman, or Black women, Black people aren't real I'll say Black people weren't real supportive. And so you have to deal with that inner stuff too. Like, I'm a Black entrepreneur, but because I'm gay, I can't get the support of the Black community. But then when all my clients are white, then the Black community is questioning me. Like, it's a lose-lose. So I can't speak to their struggle specifically, but I know that there is a lot of things that are just compounded just because you're gay.
And so let me ask y'all a question. I do want to, so I brought something up earlier, and I'm curious just your perspective on it, right? Because we kind of moved on to something else, but the idea, I've always had this question, how people feel about it. So the idea when you talk about trans, and I was talking about the context of a man transitioning to a woman and competing in like women's sports, right? So there's an MMA fighter who was previously a man who just had in the past few months had a fight against a woman, and it went really bad for the woman. And then you've seen that within the context of track. I'm not sure I've seen it in other contexts, but what's your thought process on that? I don't know how you justify being able to do that. I know the MMA issue, they claim that they test the individual for levels of testosterone, and through the transitioning process, people can generally, lose their testosterone and lose that. I don't know scientifically how it works, if you can lose your strength advantage, but it just seems fucked up to me. I don't know if y'all have a thought process on it, or if you even give a fuck, honestly. But
so the way that I'm approach this is, and I know this might sound real fucked up, but women's equality. So if women want to have an equal playing field in life as a woman, basically you're leaning into your gender and you want an equal playing field, then I guess you can equally get your ass beat by a trans woman.
I knew that was covered. That's why I was laughing.
I'm just saying, like you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. I love Cat. Shout out to Cat Williams when he talked about, Lil Tink Tink. So do you have a natural disadvantage the natural advantage because of you were born a man? So, this makes you stronger. I don't know. Me and one of my friends had this conversation, like, is the thing about a man is that what makes the man is his strength? And I'm like, no, because women can exhibit the same type of strength, even if they're smaller in frame. Women can be just as self-sufficient, if not more so. We literally birth children, but that's not the thing. If we're the ones who give birth, whatever the father chooses to do, we still have to provide. So if that means we have to hunt, kill, do whatever, we'll do those things. Now, if there is a man that is in the mix who can do those things, then you figure that out. So I think when we start looking at it like that, I can see why people are like, you shouldn't be competing if you have this natural advantage because you were born a man. But when we're having a conversation about equality and equal level playing fields, like
that's why gender roles and equality. I mean, some of that shit's bullshit, because the reality is there is a physical, men by and large have physical advantages over women. They do. I mean, those are just facts. Now, obviously, when you account for things like, I'm not talking about me against some woman who's trained for MMA her whole life, right? Because I'm not an MMA fighter. She can probably whip my ass, right? Because she's just more skilled. But when you control for the same experience, like a man with the same level of experience as a woman when it comes to whatever the field is, by and large, if it's based on just pure strength, not necessarily even speed or something like that, but strength, or even, when you look at track, you notice the men's times are faster than the women's. It's just, they are. Now, obviously, if I race fucking, whoever else on
that's because you don't got boobs holding y'all down, but continue. Just playing.
Go ahead, Seth. What are you about to say?
I said Sha'Carri.
Oh yeah, Sha'Carri. Like Sha'Carri's gonna whoop my ass on the track meet, right? Because she's a track runner. I'm not, right? So obviously, because people always be like, "Well, I bet she can whoop your ass." Well, yeah, I'm not the comparison, right? But the reality is, when it comes to like physical strength, like men are by and large stronger than women, like from a physical perspective, not
I have
from
a stupid question. I'm sorry, Bob. I have a stupid question. What's my boy's name? Sorry. Jenner.
Caitlyn
Jenner.
Bruce.
It was Bruce, right?
Right.
Greatest athlete in the world, Wheaties boxes, all that.
Right.
At 50, 60, she finds out that she's a woman. Was the testosterone levels like, was she a woman then?
Man, I think we're going to go into a whole different place. We don't want to go when it comes to the Jenners and the Kardashians, because I'm convinced that the Kardashian women do something that any man attached to them fucking ends up on the opposite side of life. So
they're gonna be crazy. And so I agree with you. And that's why I prefaced the question, but it does make me think. Like, I mean, what we're playing both sides of the fence here. I don't know.
I mean, he's definitely Caitlyn has definitely taken advantage of the space. You know, I definitely think Caitlyn has taken advantage of the space, but I hear y'all, and yes, in general, men are stronger, but we cannot forget that there were tribes of women, African tribes of warrior women. So I think the word you use, Rob, that really sums it up is your skill level. If you're competing at anything, this is a competition of skill, male or female, lightweight, heavyweight. It is about your skill. And so if you've trained, trans or not, male or female, if you've trained, then you should be able to take on any competitor. And if you can't, do better.
Let's be real.
See, here's the thing: Sha'Carri versus Usain Bolt.
It's not even
you see what I'm saying?
A debate. Or Shaq versus anybody in the WNBA.
Brittany Griner. That's what I'm thinking. Like this.
But I mean, come on now, y'all like using people that are uniquely who they are. Like, come on.
Okay, Adam. Was Caruso from the Bulls? Caruso and Candace Parker.
Diana Taurasi.
Right.
Diana Taurasi. If this woman felt that they wanted
there's no chance in hell.
Put in the work to compete.
There's no chance.
Let her ride her own ego. She may never win.
I'm not saying like she's not skilled.
He literally was like,
I'm not. I mean, Diana Taurasi is literally probably the greatest, maybe, but women's basketball player of all time.
Right.
Right. Caruso gave her the business.
Give her that one.
I'm not sure. Like, I'm not sure Seth wouldn't give her the business. Like,
no, hold on. Don't put me in that.
Let me ask you this: why?
Peak Seth basketball.
Why are sports not co-ed? Why are sports just not co-ed?
Because of the what do you mean? Well,
physical differences.
Yeah, because the physical.
Why does there have to be a WNBA versus an NBA?
Because like there's a significant difference in the athletic ability. Maybe not the skill level, but the athletic ability. There's a reason why you see strength and speed. It's just different.
I get where you're going. If we're
I want to be with you here, Cam. I want to be with you.
No, I'm just and I'm being realistic here. Because here's the thing: if we're gonna have this conversation, and we're gonna have this conversation about trans, I think it really boils down to, shit, you either gonna accept it or you not. I know what you guys are saying, and I'm not pushing back just to be an asshole. I'm just saying, like, maybe I'm a little bit of a misogynist. I just feel like women just need to if you can't have it both ways. You know what I'm saying? You can't want an equal playing field and be like, oh, but wait, that's not equal just because structurally I'm smaller. Same thing with women who abuse a man, a woman who's okay with hitting on a man, and then the man finally get fed up, and because he's by nature stronger, then there's an issue where you shouldn't have put your hands on that man.
I think that so, and this is another topic for another day, but it goes to the idea that there are some gender roles that exist for a reason, right? There's some roles and some positions in life that exist for an actual reason, and sometimes they benefit everybody, right? The fact that men can be that tend to be physically stronger means that maybe women benefit from the fact they don't have to carry in all the fucking groceries, and the man has to carry in all the groceries, or he has to do all the physical labor around that. Not to say that women don't do physical labor around the house. That's not what I'm saying. I know plenty of women who either run their own house or don't have a man around or whatever it may be. They do that shit on their own, right? But by and large, like, the physical stuff around the home, most of the time the men are going to do, unless you have a suck ass, husband or boyfriend around, and in which case, I'm sorry for you. But the reality is,
but essentially, you're saying gender roles only exist in partnership.
No, I'm not saying that. I think there's just roles that men play in society and women play in society, and I don't think that all of them are wrong. I think there's benefit that they benefit each side. Like, women can get away with not having to do certain shit that men have to do, and same thing. There's a benefit to men as well when it comes to gender role.
And I don't want to speak for Greg, but I think we touched on this before. Like, our work roles. You usually see men in the more physical, demanding jobs. The electricians, the guys that are climbing the poles. The construction people and stuff like that. Just because of those physical differences. So I don't think that Bob's speaking about just in relationships, but sort of, all of everything that we do.
Okay, yeah, I guess I am about to be controversial. Are y'all under a rock somewhere? Women are in construction now. They're truck drivers. Women are doing a lot more roles now. Maybe not previously, but you can find a woman in any role that you can find a man. And maybe men having office jobs and they're eating while they're at their desk, they're consuming too much estrogen, because I feel like a lot more men have desk jobs, and you're not going to see them doing a lot of physical labor, even around the house, especially when they know their desk job can pay for somebody else to do it. I feel like this is what I'm experiencing.
Thank you for correcting me. Yes, women can be in these roles. I'm not saying that they're excluded from these roles, just saying generally speaking, the majority,
I guess I'm just really seeing a shift.
It might be anecdotal. I mean, maybe it's shifting more towards being equal, but I can't pull the data.
I think these are traditional roles that we're talking about. You got women-owned construction companies, women-owned manufacturing companies.
Greg had this debate already on in one of my inbox.
I'm gonna put it to you like this: I am part of the new era. There's no more traditional roles. I'm gonna go to a club with my lady and start some shit with the biggest motherfucker in there, and I'm gonna look at her and say, "Baby, handle my lightweight."
Put this motherfucker down.
Yeah. My lightweight.
Put him down.
I'm gonna say, go ahead, handle that. My woman about to whoop your ass.
It's more than a notion that any black woman, no matter how big or small, if her man is in a scuffle, she's swinging a shoe or something.
Gonna fight. Now that's real talk too.
But there's not an
expectation. But there's not an expectation.
We have this tradition, right? We have these traditional roles, and black people, and it's so weird because black people in America have never truly been able to benefit from those traditional roles. Only like this short sliver of time, where probably 1940s, 1950s, we have our black communities, we have black professionals, we're in the colleges, we're thriving. And I think you see, the father and the mother in the home. But to your point you made earlier, Rob, black people used to enlarge across the board. We were just all poor. And when we were all poor, a lot of times this is when Jim Crow was around. We were losing our men to certain shit, and our men just weren't around for various reasons. Then you want to take it back to slavery, and our men weren't around because they weren't allowed to be around. So there's no point in history where at least Black women haven't had to show up and just do what you got to do when you got to do it, whether she wants to or not. And unfortunately, for that reason, this is why to this day we're still dealing with these things in healthcare where they just think Black women can take so much pain because we're so strong. They look at us as motherfucking ox, and we can do, it's just, no, my pelvic is splitting. Oh, it's just bitch, my pelvic is splitting. That's not okay. So we're just expected to be stronger in every capacity. We're expected to be emotionally stronger. We're expected to carry the load if we don't have a man around. And I think this is where we're going to start seeing a shift. And what we have to do is understand that gender roles are now whatever you make them in your own relationships. But I don't think you're going to see the traditional roles that much any longer.
See, and I think part of that was your survival, though. Like there's a level of survival within that point that also alters your way of thinking. Because you can go back, as you said, for slavery, there was buck busting. Like if you were a woman slave in that time period and you watched your man get raped by a white man to show you that man has no strength or real power to protect you, that kind of derives into your level of survival of what you have to do. So, I mean, there's pieces to that also dictates that level of strength or the awareness of that level of strength that you do possess, because truthfully, that can also dictate if you truthfully trust, quote unquote, your Black men to protect you in the first fucking place. If
how do we? I think that's a whole nother conversation we
correct,
have to make time
correct,
for.
yeah, right,
but
right.
I would definitely say, then what is it? As a Black man, you are acknowledging this, but when we're talking about realistically trying to move forward as the collective, what is the role of the Black man to understand this? Because right now, Black men are, oh, you're too aggressive. Oh, you're Miss Independent. I don't want no woman like that. Well, shit, I had to be.
Right.
So how do we bring these two things together? How do we bring this trauma together and figure out how to work through this together? Because it was out of survival. And so it's hard for me after having to take care of myself for so long and do what I needed to do. And now I have a male partner in my life, and it's going to go one or two ways. I'm going to expect you to do just as much as me, or, I'm probably going to dominate you.
But here's the thing, for that to actually happen, there has to be an acceptance of his survival. Your survival is an explanation. His survival is an excuse. You have to accept it as an explanation and not look at it as an excuse, because that's
we definitely gonna have to have, because I want you to go into that, and I don't know if we got the time tonight, but I want to have that conversation.
Oh, well, we just set up next week's episode.
Gender roles in the 21st century.
Fuck it. I'm purposely not saying shit because I'll send us down a rabbit hole. I don't feel like doing it today.
I'm still stuck on Alex Caruso.
But let's circle back around. Let's circle back around to the transgender thing. I think just, transgender, we just have to accept it as for what it is. And if people feel like it's a unfair disadvantage, I just feel like people need to put their feet in the direction of where they stand. So if you're a woman who's competing in something and you have an issue with a transgender woman competing with you because you feel like they have an unfair advantage, you walk away from that sport and there's no competition, then people have to start looking at it. But as long as you try to stay in that sport, and you know what I'm saying, complain at the same time.
Yeah, I'm calling bullshit. I don't think anybody should compete. Like, if you were a guy, you shouldn't be able to. I don't care how you felt inside, like, and how you identify now. Like, bottom line is you can't compete against chicks.
But let your feet do the walking. Like if there's a real issue as a woman who has a competitor who was born a man and is stronger, then those women need to let their feet do the talking for them. Yeah. Because I honestly, I'm just trying to, I don't know if I want Black people to be accepted. I want us to accept ourselves. But right now we live in a society where you can't really have one government meet the needs of every subculture. It's just too many subcultures.
Yeah, why can't we just get with all the other minorities and make up our own alphabet?
Hey, exactly. We be the AA, L, M.
Just get with all the minorities, just so we all just come together. And
we're gonna have
POC.
We have our pronouns too. You can refer to me as they from here on out.
Because I represent all of us, goddamn it.
Sounds like you have a mental disorder, sir. Hey. But anyway, I'm sorry. That should trip me out when people like refer to me as they. Like, how many of you are there? What do you mean they? It is schizophrenia. Like, it's one of you motherfuckers. Like, what do you mean they? Like, and that's like
I'm a couple. You're what?
Look, for the folks who are listening, some people are like, fuck him. Like, no, look, one thing I do have issues if you look like, so you look like a guy, right? Let's say you look like a guy, you look very masculine, right? And you approach somebody talking about, no, I identify as her and she. Cool. After you tell me, I'm going to honor your wishes. But what you can't do is get mad at me for referring to you as sir when you look like a sir, right?
And you have a full beard,
and you know you look like a sir. Like, it's me showing up like, no. Right. I mean, like, you have to be like, yeah, I know I look like a dude, but look, I identify as him, or her, she, whatever. Like, and then people get disrespectful after that. Fuck them. But like, if you tell them and they don't make the change, and that's their problem. But like, you can't get mad at people when you know you look a particular type of way, right? Like, come on, man. Like, you walking at me like, I don't know who you are. Like,
well, one of my experiences was a group of young people did a presentation on the whole pronoun thing. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it was just the anger and the energy, because here I am never hearing this before. And now you want me to automatically walk up to you and tell me how I'm supposed to introduce myself and ask you, like,
I'm not doing it. And I'm not putting it on my email signature.
Like why? I mean, like you said, if this is what you tell me, I'm going to respect and honor it as such. I'm not going to be disrespectful, but you're not going to come for me.
I identify as a transformer. I am an Autobot. I would like for you to. You all need to refer to me in my Autobot name.
And I mean, it's jokes, but like, I guess my point is overall, like, it's just, come on, man. Some of this shit is exhausting, like, because it's something new.
Some of this shit is white people shit, period.
Like, come on, man. Like, what's your pronoun? Like, come on. Like, now, because I've noticed people put it on their email signatures. I've had people ask me, like, are you going to change your email signature? Like, no, my name says I'm a guy. Like, so when you call me like sir, I don't give a fuck, because that's who the fuck I am. Like, what if somebody
and I got chi-chi, so if you can't look at me and tell I'm a woman, then I don't know what to tell you.
But if somebody comes in and starts calling me ma'am and missus, I know you be an asshole, right? Like, I don't look like a chick. You know I don't look like a chick. You just doing that shit.
You sure that beard is right. I don't know.
It's different
that beard is a little suspect.
It's different if I'm a feminine looking guy. Like, if you're a because people probably done told you're a feminine looking guy your whole life, or talk about how pretty you are and shit like that. Okay. Like, if somebody mistakes you for whatever, like, you probably used to it, like, yeah, I look kind of feminine sometimes. I'm a guy
up.
Like,
I'm gonna go downstairs for some milk and cookies.
People would.
You saw that post, didn't you?
Yeah, because Bernie Mac would have pissed some people clean off.
I know, right?
Clean off. Like, they mad about Dave. Like, you've been real pissed off from Red Fox, and
The only one thing I want to say about that is I'm really curious as to what stance Steve Harvey would take if Bernie Mac was still with us and he remained who he was, because I feel like Steve Harvey, he'll speak as much. he'll go as far as his check will let him go.
Oh yeah.
He said that at the Def Comedy Jam 25. He said, y'all up here saying some shit. You ain't gonna fuck up my damn Family Feud money.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
okay.
That's exactly what he said.
Yeah, he was like, I just like to let ABC know this ain't me. That's them. Y'all not fucking up.
Steve got too
I
many.
do remember that now. You're right. See?
He got too many suits he gotta wear, and he gotta support his chick. So he like, hey, look, his wife. So like, hey, you gotta keep it all together.
And
she bad though.
His stepdaughter.
His stepdaughter, yeah, but his wife, her mama is bad.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Do what you gotta do, Steve. Each your own.
Steve out here like fuck y'all. Fuck y'all. He ain't got time for y'all at all.
And you know what? If you gonna keep it real like that, then people need to respect that. I just know not to come to you for certain things.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? But the cancer culture, we got to stop trying to cancel Black people now. It's just stupid. We're all struggling one way, shape, form, or fashion, and you gonna let some white motherfucker tell you to cancel a Black motherfucker?
Right.
Especially on some shit you don't even actually care about.
Right.
That's the part.
Hey.
If you,
that's what I would give Black people credit for on the Chappelle shit. Most Black folks are like, hey, y'all, we ain't canceling Dave. So I don't know what y'all got to say about this shit, but y'all gonna figure this shit out.
They was quick to cancel Cosby. That shit was funny to me.
I'll just show the greatest TV of all.
But you know why they canceled? You know why they canceled Bill is because he got indignant with that pound cake speech and shit, talking shit about Black folks, and he lost the support of Black folks. He's over here trying to chastise us and shit. Meanwhile, he was, Steph Curry and pills in the chicks' cups and shit. And, so people are like, oh, for real? So you want to talk shit about the Black family and how indignant poor Black folks are and shit, but now you over here, you need our help when these white folks come after you.
And
that's
for all of you people listening to this, wait, before you go, for all you people listening to this, when he said Steph Curry and pills, he means shooting pills into women's drinks, because they'll take that out of context, but like Steph Curry be dropping pills in people's drinks.
Yeah, it's a
points of clarification.
Yeah.
But I mean, let that be a lesson. Don't fuck. If you don't fuck with Black people, we won't fuck with you. We won't fuck up your check.
Right. That's what happened. Like you can't just turn your back on half the Black community, and then when shit go wrong for you, be surprised when motherfuckers is like, fuck them, you can have them. Like shit. Like see you when I see you.
And like, I gotta slide this one in here. The Pied Piper has yet dropped another song. I have not listened to it because I have to have some consciousness about myself. And he is good for dropping new music after a case.
He recorded it in jail?
In the studio.
Well, he probably got an archive of shit. He probably has an archive of shit.
Number one is R. Kelly. Number two, have y'all seen the videos of these Negroes that's in jail now? Like, they literally is set up with...
They put some shit together. Like, they do put some shit together. Like, he's probably in there. It's going to be a whole series, Trapped in the Cell, part one.
Here's the thing.
I might be here for that.
It's going to be called Solitary.
Here's the thing. You know where Black folks sit, because this ain't even just Chicago. This ain't even Chicago people. You know where Black folks sit with R. Kelly, because they sat there and said his catalog made a shit ton of money since his conviction.
Right. I saw that. Like, so since his conviction, like it blew up. He made all types of cheddar.
Right. So Black folks done told you. They might not say it out loud, but
they said it with their pocketbook.
They say it with their fucking pocketbook.
I did like that TP2.
So having a millennial, or what is this? No, she's Gen Z. Gen Z? Yeah. So having a Gen Z in my house, they're sensitive about everything, right? They're conscious about everything. And she can't even help herself. She like, I know I ain't supposed to like R. Kelly, but he really be dropping like it's insane. You have to listen. He's really good at what he does.
He is pretty fucking talented. If a motherfucker will make you forget about kidnapping and marrying minors and raping folks, like when a motherfucker is that talented, where you like
singing the song.
Right. called himself the Pied Piper and shit. You still like
put this right in front of our face.
He told us. He
Right.
left every
Two
breadcrumb, and
steppers.
we was just like, "But my nigga, I gotta slide
That
with this
shit's
honey
hot.
tonight."
Like 12 play hits different for me now, but it's like,
Yeah,
God damn,
I
it's
can't
still
listen to 12 play
yeah,
no more.
it's different for me now. But
Some songs like they come on, like, you know, Pandora or whatever, and excuse me, I got this feeling like, is he talking about a 16-year-old? Because if so, I can't.
You don't
do this.
know. Like
Right.
he done said some shit every now and then. You like, wait a minute, like this
Show
motherfucker
me
was.
some ID.
Like I used to justify it. I know who I'm singing to. Like
There you
know
go.
what
You like, I'm
singing.
not singing to a 16-year-old. I'm
Right.
singing to
But now there's so much information. Like it's just like, damn, bro.
right.
Like,
Because especially as a guy like on R. Kelly, like, you know, so I used to joke with folks all the time, like, don't get me wrong, I love like female R&B singers, but I tend to listen more to male R&B music because I identify with where they're coming from, right? For the most part, as far as like what they're talking about. But somebody like R. Kelly, you can't sit here and listen to his shit and know he thinking about intentionally, he thinking about a child or a minor or some shit like that. You know, that's what he's thinking about. Like, I can't listen to that shit. I mean, look, my family's from Chicago. Greg know that we rep the South Side, like, they still play his shit. They don't give a fuck in Chicago. Let's get that out of the way right now. Like, wherever you go, they still playing shit, and they stepping the fuck out of it to it. Don't talk to folks about it. They're like, we've been told you he was fucked up for years, but this shit is amazing. We're gonna listen to his shit. Like, the art is the art. We're gonna leave it at that. Like,
Right.
so,
but let's be fair. White people do it too, because Woody Allen, right?
Well, Elvis Presley.
Woody Allen, Elvis Presley, Buddy Holly, all them.
So my daughter, she won a Scholastic Award, a regional award, and we went, and Scholastic literally there's this whole homage to Woody Allen. And I'm like, is this the same Woody Allen that's like a pedophile that married his like, wait, maybe
Trump. We can keep going.
That's because there's Epstein, Bill Clinton, everybody. So like there's a whole culture of that shit. Like, and that's been since the dawn of time. I mean, the whatever Caesar to Rome or Alexander, all these motherfuckers, like, they was out here fucking boys and shit. So like, let's keep it real. Like, this is not a new phenomenon, and that's why you have so many people secretly like buying that shit up. Like Greg, to your point, the folks who are buying that music is a secret culture of pedophiles who are like, oh, these are my people. Like, let's keep it real, because you got folks out here. Because you got folks out here who are actually, you have folks who are openly trying to argue for the fact that it's appropriate or it's okay to be attracted to children. Like, that is actually an argument there's people out here trying to make in real life. That, look, this is no different than a man being attracted to a woman, or a woman being attracted to a woman. Like, I'm just attracted to children as if that's normal. Like, that's the type of shit you're out here dealing with. Like, so now, I'm not surprised that there's a subculture of folks who probably, because of what they heard about him, decided, I need to listen to this music. Which is
so that makes me think about those people who sit there and like to have their women dress up in the little schoolgirl outfits.
Yes, that is always disturbing, and we're going to talk about the Brazilian or the shaved kitty, because that's so prepubescent. But hey, here we are.
I did not think that this conversation would get there tonight.
I'm just saying, Cam was like, men have a lot of weird things that
pussy is all like, damn, Cam, like,
it is weird.
Bunch of motherfuckers listen like, damn, I like this shit trim, but fuck it, I don't like it anymore.
I mean, to me, it's always been a weird fetish, because the only way that's natural state means that you're underage.
I don't know that, and I don't know that folks necessarily make that correlation. So like that. I don't think they like that get in the way of their shit. Like, I like that shit.
Maybe it's because they don't have daughters and they never change a diaper. The shit's very similar.
That may be true, actually. That's a good point. Like,
there's a woman listening to it, it's just going, I just get hot.
Right.
No, I'm not saying it's not. Notice what I'm saying. It's literally about a man's attraction. Like, men should just be able to take it or leave it. But if your preference is shave,
Oh yeah, I mean, if you out here like, no, you got to shave that. I can't fuck with you otherwise. Like, you got some problems.
Yeah, that's weird over
here. Yeah, because pussy's pussy, right? Like, I mean, like, let's keep it real. But then we're going into this. It's almost midnight, so it must be after dark. All out of fuck.
But all of a sudden, it's after dark.
And it's transitioned from just explicit to very mature.
So fuck a transgender. Let's talk about pussy. All right.
Well, let's talk about pedophilia because it still is. You know, I always see
Jim
the
Clyburn
conversation
jumping in like, "Hey,
now we're talking about things that I would like to.
Who said after dark?"
Speaking of Sister Weatherall,
pedophilia is a situation, y'all.
Jim Clyburn come like, Miss Cam, I do not like mine. Shave too much. I like it very hairy.
I like it very hairy.
If you could have Southern,
can you have a very hairy pussy and wear bloomers? Yeah, you just have on some bloomers and stop.
Everybody listen. This is almost as bad as the first episode we ever had on the show. I took it to what was it? What was it? Ladybug porn? Is that what I took it to?
What is ladybug porn?
Is that what I took it to?
Like,
what is that? Alien? What was it? Oh, Alien. That doctor.
You're talking about that doctor who was over here talking about. I forget what kind of sex she was talking about, but like, there's a doctor, one of these crazy ass coronavirus doctors, and people were listening to her on YouTube, and she believes in some shit. Astral sex.
Astral sex, yeah.
Whatever the fuck.
I think I've had some.
Okay.
Whoa.
On that note.
Wait, what now? No time out.
I don't know.
I don't know what astral sex is. I mean,
you just okay. So apparently it is after dark.
Is that like the tantra shit? Hold on.
No. Y'all, seriously. One day I woke up and everything about me felt like I had sex, and I hadn't had sex, and I was going through a drought. So
was the door locked?
Something happened.
That's probably just
no, something happened. Like, it was strong. Like those memories. I don't know if men. I don't know if y'all have memories after sex. I feel like y'all lose y'all memories after sex. Like, once y'all release, like, everything. Like,
wait, Steph is like, hold on now. Let's stay with this.
I was like, explain.
Like
this.
Keep talking.
I cannot speak on behalf of any other woman. So please don't let me act like I'm speaking on behalf of all women. But
repeat that in this voice.
I can carry that feeling. Like, if it's a good session, I can carry that feeling with me, and I can recall that feeling and have my little volcanic eruptions. And to have that feeling when I wake up, as if I had already had that experience, it was a little weird to me. And it was a person who came to mind. So I'm like, did this motherfucker just astral project? Like, I don't know.
Or did you make sure your doors are locked?
Yes, men don't even come in my home.
I'm just joking.
You know,
what are we doing? Right.
I was ninja sexed, okay?
Ninja sex.
I don't know. So
nobody wakes up feeling like they've had sex if they didn't have sex.
But a ninja did it?
Or it was astral projection. Pick whichever one. I'll go with it.
Would you possibly on the phone with somebody?
No. That was why it was so strange. I was like, wait a minute.
Greg keep going like, I want to know more.
I want to know more.
There are now I will say, I follow a lot of spiritualists. I follow a lot of spiritualists. So there are women and, people who believe in astronomy and all of these things. And there are people who talk about it, but I can for certain say one morning I woke up just feeling like I had intercourse and I couldn't figure out why.
But just one. This just only happened one time.
This only happened one time.
So the fucked up part about this is, Bobby, fuck what we've been saying for the past 2.5 hours. This is what's about to get us views. and people
it is. Like, I'm joking, but it is like, it's the only shit people are gonna hear. Like, you remember the episode where Cam was talking about astral sex that she had.
And that's gonna make me. They like, oh, she's really weird. She's really out there.
You know what's about to happen, Cam? Yeah, they about to fill your inbox up.
Yeah,
literally.
So
they about to fill our inbox up.
Right. You welcome. You welcome. We just
am I?
So,
thank you, I guess. I'm just saying somebody brought it up, and I just felt like sharing that I have possibly had that experience.
Doctor. But
yeah,
hey, look, they're gonna be all in Cam's DMs like
it's like a UFO sighting, right?
Tell me
Did
more.
it happen? Did it not happen?
All
I know is
you have to fill us in on your DMs. Like, so we'll bring you back on after this show gets published. We need to know what happens in your DMs. Like, obviously, because I gotta know, because you know how y'all know how brothers about to be Southern, right? Like they about to be like, oh, bet, like
I'm
they ready, like. Bet.
Well, I mean, like I said, it was an interesting experience because everything felt. Now I happened to have vivid dreams in the first place, so I will say that. But it wasn't a dream about sex. It just, when I woke up, I had this feeling that I had sex with a particular person, and I could feel physical remnants of it. Now, who knows?
See,
but
Kim, you just don't understand.
It wasn't after me being intoxicated, inebriated, or anything like that. I don't party. This has been since the pandemic, so it's not like I was just out there with anyone anyway. So I thought it was pretty strange. And when I shared it with that person, that's who actually, he was like, oh, so I was astral projecting. That's the only reason why I said.
And what did he say next? Did he say, do you want me to come over?
No, he said, did I beat it up?
Wow. It's a fair question.
Did I beat it up?
Jeez. There's a 65-year-old man sitting here with some yak talking about, I got to get to know this Cam girl.
Right.
This is the first time you're listening to this show, but this Cam girl.
All I'm saying for all of you, people out there, and for all of you people out there, as open as you will allow your mind to be when it comes to sexuality, as open as the experiences you will have. That's all I got.
And she hear it too.
Oh, damn, I have said a lot. What happened here?
With that being said,
yo, that's a good segue for what the fuck news.
We're gonna segue right into the what the fuck news segment. Now we had an excellent transition and introduction to the what the fuck news segment. For those of you who are regulars to the show, you know that this is the segment where we bring up crazy shit in the news, crazy topics. We've already gotten there for y'all, so we're just gonna continue it on. Greg, you got a what the fuck?
So yeah, my what the fuck is the headline reads, Tennessee County reportedly illegally jailed hundreds of children, charging some of them with crimes that don't even exist. So according to a ProPublica article, Rutherford County, Tennessee used what county officials called a filter system starting in 2008, which left it up to the discretion of jailers to decide whether a child arrested and taken to juvenile detention centers should be released. Though Tennessee law only allows for children to be held under specific circumstances, under the direction of this particular judge, Judge Donna Scott Davenport, the county's sole juvenile court judge. The county's policy is for all children charged with crimes to be processed at the detention center, either through being arrested or dropped off by their parents. In 2016, an incident that sparked outrage. The policies of this county were used to arrest 11 elementary school children, all black, with 6 of them being handcuffed and 4 being locked up in jail for allegedly watching a scuffle involving a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old.
No.
And 1 older boy. The children were charged with criminal responsibility for conduct of another. That's not a thing. That's not even a real crime. They watched the fight and they got arrested.
Tennessee.
Yeah, this is Rutherford County, Tennessee. Rutherford County, Tennessee.
So now I have to ask the race of these children.
They were black. They were black. All 11 of them were black. The result was a class action lawsuit against Rutherford County, which was settled in 2017 when the county agreed to pay out a combined $397,000 to the 11 children. So that tells me this motherfucking county is poor as fuck. You got a whole.
I'm interested in the racial makeup of the county.
Yeah, so and I guess we just got to look up Rutherford County, Tennessee. But the officer who signed off on the criminal responsibility for conduct of another charges was suspended for 3 days, while the head of the juvenile detention facility remains in their job. But supposedly this judge she took the bar like 9 or 10 times.
Yeah, she was terrible. She was a terrible lawyer.
And then within a year of taking the bar, she became a judge.
Because oftentimes becoming a judge ain't about how good of a lawyer you've been. It's just
right.
Political connects.
Right. So that's a what the fuck for your ass.
Yeah, there's a judge sitting on the Ohio Supreme Court right now, which was not recommended by the Bar Association. Has a terrible score, and she got elected based on name recognition. But
wow.
So that tells you why you need to pay attention to your judicial races. So that's fucked up. Generally, that's all I gotta say about that.
That is a what the fuck moment, man.
I got a couple actually. So I got one. Have you guys seen this shit about Meek Mill and his album cover being wrapped around a bus and people being pissed about it? So basically, Meek Mill just released an album, and the album cover is actually by it's a queer artist actually. So basically the artist, there's a bunch of shit on there, like a bunch of depictions of like traditionally negative stereotypes within the hip hop community. It's like a chick bending over, it's a chick on a pole, like there's like it's a very like almost abstract type artwork. But so long story short, in promoting the album, they've done like the bus wraps where you wrap it around the bus, and it's in Philly, like so. And there's like a video that went viral. There's like white father. He was pissed off. Like, this is the shit that we want our kids seeing. And it's, don't get me wrong, it is pretty crude based on the album cover. But I get the feeling, and I don't know this, but the feeling I get is that it's intentional by Meek Mill to specifically address like a whole bunch of the negative shit within the culture and within the rap community, and he's intentionally doing it. On top of that, it's artwork done by a woman who is also, I think, identifies as either LGBTQ. I don't know which particular letter, but it's crazy because there's a bunch of controversy. The reason why I want to kind of bring it up and talk about is because what is the difference? So people are pissed off, and I get it. Like if I have a daughter and that's on the inside of a bus, not excited about having a conversation with her, but I had to take a step back and be like, well, what's the difference between that and you taking your kids to a museum and seeing the statue of David or any one of these other Greek statues or some other form of art where it shows someone that's negative or naked? What really is the difference, right? And a lot of people are like, well, there's a big difference because they're in these crude positions and it's just different. Or is it just because it's hip hop and it's something that's, because this is an actual artist that actually did this. I don't know. If you haven't seen it, you probably can't talk to it, but there's a bunch of controversy over this shit. So I thought that was an interesting what the fuck. I don't know. I don't think there's a difference between that and like naked Roman statues, honestly. So,
wow.
So
marketing, man. I mean, it's nothing more than marketing.
That's all it is. I mean, I probably would have made the decision to wrap it around a bus, but I'm not gonna take somebody through the polls. But I did have a fucked up one. So there's a story, a dad is being held on charges because his toddler found a gun in his Paw Patrol backpack and fatally shot the mother while she was on a Zoom call for work.
Whoa.
Right. Case in point, if you have weapons, secure your weapons, folks. I don't understand people who just have shit just out. But that's fucked up. Because so the father came home and the wife and the mother of the child was on the floor, bleeding out of her head, called 911, trying to find out. And the people on the Zoom call called because they heard what happened. But the child just probably thought it was a toy because it was a fucking Paw Patrol backpack. And,
wow.
Unless there's some other foul play going on.
I just read on a social media post from a Black gun group, Black gun education and things of that nature. And that was one of the things. It's just every negligent incident is 100% preventable. So yes, everyone please keep those weapons out of the reach of your children and keep them locked and keep them safe. safety on.
Yeah.
And teach that's insane.
That's
me
wild.
being
Like,
a
I can't.
gun advocate and concealed carry advocate, I always tell people there's training involved. And part of the training is even when you lock up your gun, there's things you're supposed to do. You're supposed to basically take your magazine out. You're supposed to take the one out of that. You're not supposed to actually have it in a situation where most people go, well, I got to get to it quick and I got to be you're literally supposed to do a lot of different things and then lock up the weapon. But people just, wow.
I ain't gonna hold you up. I'm not a gun owner. And I don't know the process of how long it takes, because you are supposed to store your ammunition away from your gun.
Right.
Not keep a loaded gun in the house. But if I have an intruder, I need how we gonna get faster? Because it's either me or you.
Yeah, it's a catch-22. You're not gonna be able to be like, you wait right there. Just gotta load this real quick.
You need to be able to keep them separate but close, right?
So separate but close, yeah.
Right. And so that's how I store mine that way. Like, I've got multiple safes and they're in different places, but for that particular reason, I don't. I want them close, but I don't want. I got fingerprint safes, so my kids can't get into shit because
right. And I mean, when you have toddlers, that's something big. But I also think gun owners. My daughter took a gun safety class with me, a CCW class with me. I actually fear for anyone who think they're going to roll up on my daughter if she happens to have a weapon on her, because she's a much better shot than I am. That being said, I think teaching your children gun safety,
normalize gun safety with kids when they get old enough.
Yeah, I teach mine. I put videos up on when I take mine to the range, and we have classes. So
before we jump off this shit, I just want to make sure we address the issue. Everything that's going on, like Jelani Day out of Illinois.
Oh yeah. Oh God.
So because all this attention that was given to that white girl that was missing, you weren't hearing much about what was going on with Jelani. I did actually. I think I noticed on the web page or the Facebook page, the stuff about the missing organs. Actually, I don't think is true. And that was a statement from
that's debunked.
That was proved that wasn't actually true. So the story is bad enough without us having to kind of embellish it. I know sometimes it can be attractive and sexy to kind of add on the shit, but the story is bad enough that he's missing and his body is recovered. We need to normalize being able to talk about Black children, boys and girls, and young women and men who are missing, whereas the nation is captivated by this white girl and her fiance who probably strangled her and now is probably hiding under his parents' garden, apparently. From what
one thing you say normalize, and I think kind of one of my final thoughts in light of all of this, the controversy with Dave Chappelle, and just I think it essentially boils down to the Black response to anything. And like you said, is when it's hot off the presses, when I'm distracted, I have a lot to say, but eventually I get back to my life.
Yeah, maybe not normalize. Normalize is not the right word. So
I mean, but I think we do need to challenge ourselves. How do we address these issues that affect our community? Human trafficking, Black women, Black children, Black girls just disappearing, Black boys disappearing, not being found. Like you said, it's so much conversation when a white girl goes missing, and it's just, what is our response anymore? Are we that desensitized? I think someone brought it up earlier when you said we just have so much shit going on at any given time that in the context of racism, whether it's LGBTQ, missing children, pedophiles, it just all hit different.
Right. Well, shit. It's been fun. Like, we we appreciate y'all. Apparently, we're gonna bring y'all back for next week whenever we talk about. I don't know. Cam will tell us about her love life, apparently based on his DMs.
Ain't nobody gonna be in my DMs. They're gonna be like, or they don't trust a woman who can astral project sex.
Or will.
Yeah, they don't. That's a challenge. Like,
I knew it was coming.
So I was waiting for it. Like, I'm gonna send that grenade over the fence right before I leave. Just let you know, here to play ball. Greg, that's right. So
Shots
hey, look,
fired.
it's been fun. We appreciate y'all. Y'all know we love y'all. Greg, go ahead and take us out.
Yes, as always, subscribe. We are the All Out of Fucks podcast, and guess what? We own Apple. We own Apple. We own Apple. We own Apple.
Cam done throwing you completely
right. It's all this astral sex. We own Apple. We own Spotify. We own Listen. We own Stitcher.
So find somebody to come on this with me, and we're gonna talk about this astral projection. Someone who's done it intentionally. I don't know who though.
We own Audible. And select episodes, especially this episode, will be on YouTube, and we're all out of fucks.
We out this joint. Hey, holla at Cam, jump in her DMs, fellas. She's here for you. Astral sex. Holla at y'all. Peace.